Hello, and welcome back to the Alexander Society. I'm your host, German soldier currently pissing my pants, Derek, joined by my friend and co-host, the ominous sound of big band jazz drifting from the French trench line, which means my death. Tim. How are we doing, Tim?
Yeah, I can do some nice slow jazz tonight.
Some slow jazz. Well, no, this is big band jazz. This is like fancy party jazz.
Ah, the pretentious jazz.
No, the Louis Armstrong jazz. What the fuck do you mean pretentious jazz? All jazz is pretentious. Anyways, yeah, how are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing pretty good. I've got my furry son in my lap, purring, enjoying some head pats. Just got off work tonight. Wasn't a bad night. Um, waiting on Christmas. Waiting on Secret Santa presents coming in, but my furry son is my cat, Jeets.
Yeah, for context, his furry son is his cat, not his son in a fursuit.
Not that there's anything wrong with furries, as long as they're not Nazi furries.
Confederate furries.
Do you remember that? Like, when I first moved here to Tulsa, they were all trying to get me to go to the Nazi furry convention to see how bad it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that shit was so fucking funny.
I was like, I don't want to be involved with Nazis even if it's like showing up to mock them. I'm good.
Let's be honest, though. That's probably the one Nazi event where you're not going to get hate crimes because nobody's brave enough to actually do it.
Yeah, true. I was just like, wow. How did this line up? I just moved to Tulsa. This is the first month. And there's a Nazi furry convention. And my friends are trying to make me go. To point and laugh, obviously, but still.
Yeah, the Confederate flag fursuit, like the Confederate flag wolf fursuit, just, it has lived in my head rent-free for like 7 or 8 years. I will never get over it.
So, Derek, how are you doing? How's your holiday plans / gift giving going?
Oh, you know what? Pretty good. Pretty damn good. Work fucking sucks. Because it's the end of the semester. And then, have you heard about all the shit that's happening at...
No one trusts an OU degree now because of that bitch.
Yeah, it sucks so hard, but also it has been supremely funny hearing about all of the professors that I work alongside just endlessly fucking complaining about how stupid the entire situation is and how shitty they're treating that fucking TA and how it bodes really poorly for every other professor's job.
Let's get off our soapbox. What are you drinking tonight, Derek?
Oh shit, what am I drinking tonight? A whole lot now, thanks to that. But for my sipper, I just brought back out the Crown Royal Vanilla. You know it, you love it. For my shots, it's the 35%. Everybody knows what Crown Royal is. For my sipper, I got a couple of beers because this first beer I wanted to try, I only had one because this one bottle by itself was $8.
And Derek's metaphorically crying for his wallet.
It was just the one beer for $8. Like, that's fine. It's not crazy, just the one beer.
I saw the way you cringed when you brought it up the first time.
Yeah, but to be fair, though, it is a very good fucking beer. It is a very high quality beer. This is Goose Island Bourbon Bounty. Yeah, it's a Goose Island Bourbon Bounty original. Bourbon County original. This fucking logo. How am I supposed to read this shit? Goose Island Beer Company. Bourbon County brand stout. God, I cannot fucking talk tonight. Holy shit. It's a stout. It's Goose Island.
That's going to be interesting knowing our subject. If you can't speak tonight.
Maybe it's because I just spent all day reading so much French. I think my brain's just fucked up.
It's the internal rage about knowing that we're doing a cool story about the French tonight, isn't it?
To be fair, the main character is not French. I guess he's kind of French. He's adopted French, but... anyways, Goose Island Beer Company, Bourbon County brand stout. It is an imperial stout that has been aged in bourbon casks. It is... I did not notice this when I got this beer. It is a 14.8% alcohol by volume.
Woo!
14.8%. That is a liqueur. That is...
Boy!
That is barely a beer anymore. Hell yes.
It's getting close.
Anyways, it's a very and a very nice fancy bottle. It's got like a ribbony looking sort of label with a vintage on it. It's fucking delicious. It's the darkest beer that I've ever drank in my life, and it has like a nice, smooth, rounded out oaky flavor from the bourbon aging. Fucking delicious, but beautiful, like a beer I would call a work of art. Yeah. Tim, what are you drinking?
So I'm redeeming myself. I don't know if we've mentioned it on the podcast or if it made it to the episode, but last year, me and Derek went to Nothing Left's Brewing, and I bought what I thought were alcoholic root beers, but they had just released the regular sodas from Nothing's Left, and they were just regular root beers. And I didn't have it on the show or anything like that. I didn't embarrass myself by drinking a non-alcoholic thing and think it was alcoholic, on the show at least.
And then still acting drunk for the whole episode.
Yeah. Well, I was like, it doesn't taste like there's any alcohol in this. I'm weird. I don't see any percentage when I was drinking, because there were tiny cans too. That's why I didn't have it on the podcast. Because they were tiny. And it was a 4-pack. There was no way it was making through an episode with how fast I drink. So I found this. It's Not Your Father's Root Beer, and it is by, who is it by? I don't see a company. Oh, it's by Pabst Brewing Co.
Boo.
That sucks. It's done by Pabst, but it's good.
Boo.
I am disappointed, but it is 5.9%. Pretty respectable, and I can barely tell there's anything off it. Almost like you can tell there's something a little bit amiss with the alcohol, but for the most part, it tastes like a regular root beer.
It's good that you found an actually good alcoholic root beer, because most of the time alcoholic root beer is dog shit. But I am still going to actively campaign that we start a Butlerian jihad against Pabst.
I didn't know it was Pabst, or I probably wouldn't have bought it, even though I wanted an alcoholic root beer. But we're already recording. It's the only beer I've got, so we're there.
We shall suffer not the PBR to be drunk.
I have never drinking a PBR, and I never will.
I have. That's why I want to get rid of it. It is not good.
So, for my shots, I'm back to effin' Black Cherry from last week. It is, again, a 37.5% alcohol.
Buddy, you can say the word. We don't have to censor ourselves on this show. You can just say fucking.
I know that's a joke, but like I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, by the way. It's EFFEN, and it's from Holland, so I have no idea however it's pronounced.
We're going down to the bar and we're going to have some effing vodka.
That's not one of your best accents, sir, because you didn't pull off what you thought.
Well, that's because the Dutch don't have good accents.
It sounded like you were trying to do an Indian accent from my end. It was not good.
Yeah, well, everybody's a critic.
For you, I am your critic.
Here in this illustrious society of ours, we abide by an ever-changing set of rules. Rule number 1, every time our subject meets someone famous, we take a sip.
Rule number 2, every time our subject does some action hero shit, we're going to take 3 sips.
And rule number 3, every time our subject is wounded, what are we going to do, Tim?
We are going to take a shot. Cheers. I know this isn't, like, really accurate, but the best way I can describe this guy's life, summarizing it up before the audience actually, like, hears who we're talking about and starts hearing his story, is I would say he's the closest we'll ever get to a real-life equivalent of Forrest Gump. He's the closest we'll get to Forrest Gump, only this guy was, as far as I can tell, not autistic. But his life is just so insane, it sounds like a movie.
I think this guy was the opposite of autistic.
I saw nothing that indicated he was, but I mean, the comparison to Forrest Gump is just like, this is insane shit. How could this all happen to one guy?
Did you know that there's a word for people who aren't autistic?
Neurotypicals?
No, it's allistic.
I've heard that word. It's just not how I think of it. Like the closest I think of is neurotypicals.
Well, no, because you can still be neurodivergent and allistic.
I guess you're right. You're right.
Anyways, before we hop in, this is gonna kind of give away the subject, but you know they fuck it. They read the title. They know who this is about.
They clicked on the episode. They know who this is.
The main source I use for this is All Blood Runs Red: The Legendary Life of Eugene Bullard, Boxer, Pilot, Soldier, Spy by Philip Keith and Tom Clavin. God, what a book. What a crazy fucking book. What a fucking crazy... It's really telling that they had to wait till the 21st century to actually publish stuff on this guy's life, because Eugene Bullard, his life was so batshit insane that during his life and then for decades after his death, nobody would agree to publish his memoirs because everybody thought they were made up.
Yeah. This is as if we had an holistic Forrest Gump in real life.
All right. So, Eugene James Bullard was born in Columbus, Georgia on October 9th, 1895. He was the 7th of 10 children to his father William Bullard and his mother Josephine Thomas. His father's family had been enslaved on plantations in Georgia and Virginia, though Eugene grew up with tales from his father and his grandfather about their ancestry in the French Caribbean, especially the island colony of Martinique, as well as tales about his father. His father had been briefly adopted by a French family in Georgia who had raised him Catholic. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And he...
Getting to practice any religion at that point in time for someone with his background was kind of rare, wasn't it?
No. Religion was a huge part of their...
I thought, like, recently freed men and, like, just there after the abolition, like, religion wasn't easy to practice and allow...
Oh, no.
I think I got my timeline of when this was a little bit off, but, like...
No, for all of... basically all of the history of Black Americans in this country, from the earliest days of enslavement all the way up till today, Christian religion in all of its forms have been a huge part of, like, Black American cultural landscape. It's been a huge part of their lives and their communities, basically the whole time they've existed in this country.
Okay.
So yeah, no, it's Catholic is kind of unique. Being Catholic is a little bit less common in amongst Black Americans, especially in Georgia. A little more common in maybe like Louisiana, but for Georgia, they're usually going to be like Southern Baptist or something like that. But yeah, they were. The family was Catholic. Eugene was raised on these stories about their family connections to basically just all of their different family connections to France. And his father loved to tell them stories about how France was, it was the first European colonial power to abolish slavery. It was the first, anyways. So Eugene basically grew up on all these stories about his family's connection to France, about the history of France as like the first colonial power to abolish slavery, and about how France at that time was a more free place than the Jim Crow South, a place where you could go as a black man and be treated equally. This was not true, but it was more true than not, if that makes sense. At that time, France, they didn't have institutionalized racial laws, at least not against black people. They had a lot against like North African people, Arab people, Berber people, and people like that, because they had a colony in Algeria. But actual like racial codes and things like that against black people were pretty well abolished by that point in French history. And so you could walk into, if you went to Paris, if you were a black man and you went to Paris and you walked into a bar, nobody would, some people might look at you as like a curiosity, but nobody's going to tell you like, go in the back entrance or get out, we don't serve you here, that kind of thing. They'll pour you a beer and you can talk to people like that. You'll be treated with a respect that you won't find in Jim Crow, Georgia in the 1800s and early 1900s.
So it wasn't perfect equality, but it was more equality than Jim Crow South.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and so Eugene heard all of these stories, and he really latched onto the idea of France, about what this France that he kind of envisioned in his mind. He got it into his head that one day I'm going to run away from all of this racist horse shit, and I'm going to flee to a free land where I'll be treated like a man and not like a lesser.
I mean, I can't really blame him. The idea of like somewhere, like the idea of getting away from our shitty capitalist society to a better one, but knowing there's not going to be one because America's basically run roughshod up against the world.
Yeah. So he grew up in Columbus. His dad was, like I said, descended from enslaved people. His mom's family was also descended from enslaved people, but she was actually half Muskogee, so she was half native. He went to, the extent of his schooling as a child was he would go to elementary school there in Columbus until 5th grade. And that was all the school he ever got. As a child, naturally he came to hate the racial violence of the Jim Crow South, which is, not bizarre. At some...
Understandable, to be perfectly honest.
Right. Sometime in his youth, his father got into, I believe this was when he was 8 years old. His father got into a confrontation with one of the foremen at the dock where he worked. He was a longshoreman. He loaded ships. He got into a physical altercation with his foreman, his very racist foreman. And so basically what happened was, even though this guy, his dad's name was William Bullard. William Bullard was a big guy. He was 6'3" and had arms that could strangle a python. He was a big old ox of a man, basically. But he still got treated like shit at work because everybody knew that he wouldn't do anything about it, because if you're a black man in Jim Crow South, you take the abuse or you end up lynched. That is just the truth of it. And so one day...
Yeah, like that fucking pisses me off. I know we can't go back and do that, but if we had a time machine, there's so many people I would just whip their ass for.
Yeah, this foreman is up there. So he starts, hurling racial abuse at William while he's, trying to work. And so William just ignores it. He just turns his back and he keeps on working. And the foreman gets upset at this, at being ignored. So he picks up a hook, like a loading hook, and smashes it against the side of William's head, causing a huge gash to appear. And so he starts bleeding. He takes offense to this, obviously. And so he turns around, and what he does, this is how it was described, he puts one hand on the foreman's shoulder, he puts the other hand under his groin, and then he physically picks him up and throws him off of the...
Oh.
Throws him off of the dock, where he falls 20 feet onto the deck of a ship.
Ooh. Eee.
Unfortunately, the foreman survived. And so Bullard takes the rest of the day off, goes back to be with his kids, and one detail I forgot to include, his wife had just died a couple months before.
Fuck.
So he wasn't in a great state of mind, and now he's convinced, oh, well, I'm about to die. Amma is going to come and take me, and I'm going to die, and my 10 kids are going to starve.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, no. So he goes home, and he grabs his shotgun, and he takes all of his kids and packs them into their bedrooms upstairs and hides them under their beds. And then he sits on the stair. He turns off all the lights in the house, and he sits at the top of the stairs, waiting with a loaded shotgun, waiting for them to come. And the mob does eventually come with torches and rope ready. And they come and they start beating on the door, trying to get him to come out. They start beating on the windows, trying to get in. They look all around the house, and eventually they come to the conclusion that they are not there. And they end up leaving. And so this lynching attempt is thwarted. It definitely leaves a mark on Eugene.
Of course it would.
Oh God, yeah. Shortly after this event was the first time that he attempted to run away from home. At the age of 8. He is found by his dad and he's brought back home, but for the next 3 years until he turns 11, he keeps trying to run away from home over and over again. As he described it in his own memoirs, Eugene, for the rest of his life, associated that event of hiding under a bed, terrified that his dad was about to get lynched, with the emotional fallout of his mother's recent death.
That would fuck with anyone.
And so for the rest of his life, every time he suffered racial abuse, it reminded him of his dead mom.
Ah, fuck!
That's pretty fucked.
Being racially discriminated against hurts to anyone, but like having the association of losing your mom with it had to like square the emotional damage.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's real double whammy. It's not good.
Ooh.
I'm going to be nervously laughing through a lot of this story because there's really no other way for me to deal with this emotionally. It's just one of those stories.
Yeah.
So, he tried a few times to run away, and then finally when he's 11 years old, he successfully runs away, and his dad isn't able to find him. He is able to scrape together some money, $1.50, to buy a train ticket that gets him all the way to Atlanta. And once he gets to Atlanta, his intention is to find somebody that can point him to the nearest coastline where he can find a ship that will take him to France. He is 11. This is not a well thought out plan.
No! He is still a child!
Yeah. Luckily for him, he runs into a very kind family that actually takes him in. They are a Roma family. They're Romani people that have just immigrated, or they've not immigrated, but they've just come to the U.S. For work. They're originally from England. Their family name is Stanley.
Okay.
And they are in Georgia, basically. Basically, they're professional horse trainers. That's their whole thing. They travel from town to town.
Interesting.
They'll travel from town to town, and then they'll sell their services as horse trainers. They'll train horses for people that want them, especially for racing horses. And so they're like, yeah, if you want, you can come with us. We're not going to get to France, but we'll eventually go back to England. So if you want to hang out with us for a little bit and work, we'll take you back to England with us. And so he's like,
close enough.
Yeah, basically they told him that it's not going to be France, but there's similar kind of like they're not going to treat you, in general, they're not going to treat you poorly for being black, and unlike France, they actually speak the language that you speak, so it might be a little easier for you. So he was like, sounds great, sounds good to me. So he follows along with them for probably about a year, learning how to take care of horses, and then eventually how to ride horses, and then eventually how to race horses. And he becomes pretty good at it.
I don't remember this part of the story when I watched the video, but that's cool that he got horse training.
Yeah. Again, he's 12 at this point.
He is still a literal child.
Still a literal child. Eventually, he starts to get frustrated that they're not getting to Europe faster, so he goes and he starts asking them, hey, when are you going back to England? I'd like to get there sooner rather than later. And they're like, listen, we're going to be here for a few more years. We're planning on going back eventually, but it's not going to be for a while. So if you need to take off, then that's fine. But they highly recommended against it because, again, I cannot emphasize enough, he is 12 years old.
Yep. He's got that stubborn, I'm still a child, but I think I'm grown mentality that you see from kids that age.
Yeah, but for him, it's like he's working full time like an adult. He's working alongside adults in all of these jobs that he's doing. Why shouldn't he be treated
I'm not saying you're wrong. Yeah. But I'm just talking about that mindset / stubbornness. He is being a full-grown adult at this point for himself.
So he ended up leaving the Stanleys, and he bounced around Georgia for a little while, working odd jobs to feed himself and to save up a little bit. Mostly working in stables, as well as eventually he would become a professional jockey. So he'd actually start racing horses professionally. 12 years old.
Goddamn.
Which, jockeys do have to be small.
Although he's the size they want. Yeah, I was about to say, they want them to be small, light, and thin. So he was probably perfect for it at the time.
Actually, he was smaller than most jockeys, so that was an even bigger bonus. He could do all the same stuff, just a fraction of the size. So yeah, he was actually pretty good as a jockey. He did pretty well for himself.
I bet so.
And so he does that for a little while. Finally, in 1912, at the age of 17, he travels up to Fairfax, Virginia, where he works for a little bit as a longshoreman. And one day, he decides, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to hop on one of these ships and hope it takes me to Europe.
That is a kid thought process, though.
Yeah, he is like 16 at this point.
That's still a kid thought process.
So it's still, yeah, still very much a kid thought process. But the inevitable happens. What actually happens is he stows away on a ship, and then when he comes off the ship, when it makes the next port, he is still in Virginia, just a little bit further north.
That sounds exactly like something like I'm a 16-year-old. Of course, it's gonna go to across the pond. Nope.
So then he figures, well, fine. Then I'm going to find the biggest ship I can find, because if it's a big ship, it must be meant to go across the Atlantic. And so he finds the biggest ship that he can find, and he stows away on it. And it turns out it is a German ship, and it is making its way from Virginia to Scotland. A couple days into the voyage, he is found, and they arrest him. And basically they tell him, like, we don't really care, but what you're doing is illegal. Like, not only is this like stealing a free trip from the shipping company, but it's also illegal immigration. Like, he doesn't have paperwork, he doesn't have a passport, he doesn't have his birth certificate. He has.
That's also a very 16-year-old thing, not to think about the immigration part. Like, I need papers to do this. I'm just going to get on a boat and I'm going to get there.
Right. And so basically they tell him, like, so we can either put you in the brig, and then we'll just take you over there and we'll let you go when we get to the first stop, or we'll just hire you and you can work while you're on the ship, and then whenever we get to wherever you need to go, then you can take off. We'll give you your pay and bid you adieu. And so he takes the latter, because not only will it guarantee it
I mean, that's the smarter option.
Yeah. Yeah, so they do not. Here's the thing. If he had taken the just throw me in the brig option, they would have dropped him off at the next port, which was still in the United States. But he stays on, and he gets paid for his work, and eventually, after they're done in the U.S., they go back across the pond and stop off at a destination in Aberdeen, Scotland. And he gets off the ship. They pay him his wages for the time that he worked, which was $25. And they wish him luck. And he heads off into Scotland and starts to make a little life for himself. He hops around, like, he spends a little bit of time in Glasgow, and then eventually starts making his way down to England, and eventually ends up in South London. To make ends meet, originally he was just working as a longshoreman, and then, I fucking love this story. So he started off as just working as a longshoreman until one day he's walking down the street, and there's like a little fair type thing going on, and he sees one of those dunk tanks where you throw a ball and it hits the target, and if he can hit the target, then the guy falls into the water. And he figures, hey, I'm a black man in England with a little bit of wit. I could probably make a lot of money doing this. And so he goes and he sets up his own dunk tank. And he
uses racism for himself.
Yes, he uses his own black stereotypes basically to make fun of people, to egg them on into wanting to dunk the black guy in the tank.
I think this is one of my favorite parts of his story. It is the most calculating move you could make at the time, I think, to make money like that. It's smart.
Yeah, and he ends up making more money doing this one night a week than he did working 6 days a week as a longshoreman. And so, realizing that, he just quit his longshoreman job and he spent the rest of that time doing stuff that he would rather do. Specifically, he got into two things: boxing and stage performance. I'm going to talk about the stage performance first. The boxing is the more famous one. I want to talk about his time as a slapstick performer.
He was a jester? I know that's not really what it's called, but like that's what I think of when I hear it.
He was one of the Black Three Stooges, is what he was.
Jesus.
And that is not as far off as I'm being facetious, but it's not that far off, actually. He performed with a slapstick troupe called, and I hate that it's called this. It was a black troupe that was run by and for black people. It has a slur in the name that I don't like using, but here we go. The troupe was called the Freedmen Pickaninnies. And it was the second word, yeah, that the Pickaninny it's an old-fashioned slur, but it's still very much a slur.
I didn't know that was a slur. I've never used the word, and I don't even know what it means, but I didn't.
It's very old-fashioned, but especially for some reason, it's still a common slur for black people that's used by like rich conservatives in England.
That makes sense. It feels like a uppity old England type thing to say.
Yeah, relatively recently, Boris Johnson, the former the Conservative Prime Minister of England, when he was still Prime Minister, there was a scandal around an old memo that had come up that he had written, where he described a black politician in England as a watermelon eating pickaninny or something like that.
I wouldn't even have known that was a slur, and I would have been able to pick that up that it was being used as a slur. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant. It is silly a word as it is. I'm gonna stop saying it now. Anyways, he joins this troupe. This troupe is run by a famous black performer by the name of Belle Davis. Have you ever heard of Belle Davis?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not great with names. I'm like, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but I know more people for the like feats or whatever you want to call that. Like, hey, they were famous for this thing, but I don't remember their name.
For being probably the first black woman to ever make a recording.
Oh, hell yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, not only that, but also the first black woman to ever sell a song record.
Fuck yes.
Yeah, she was pretty cool. At this time, when she was in England, she was running a couple of these different black performance troupes, where basically the idea was they're going to be doing these like sort of like exploitative minstrel show type things anyways, where they'll take like black performers and have them do like racist stereotypes and caricatures for people's amusement, and then pay them like shit for it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own troops that are going to do the same thing, but even better. And then I'm going to pay them like 10 times what they would be making if it was being run by like a white person.
Actually paying them fairly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These were some of the best paid like performers outside of opera in all of England at the time.
Damn.
And so he ended up doing that for a little bit. That part of his life is a little bit less well known. What is better known is that this is when he got into boxing. Because, he'd been a professional longshoreman for a few years. He was now fully grown. He was tall like his dad was. Built like, I love this phrase so much, I use it every time it comes up. He's built like a brick shithouse.
I love that phrase too.
Big beefy dude. And he starts getting into, amateur boxing fights. There's a couple of amateur boxing gyms that are being run in South London. And he starts getting into it. He's really good at it. He's a really good boxer. And eventually he catches the attention of a pretty famous prize fighter by the name of Aaron Lister, who's another black American. He's better known as the Dixie Kid. So this guy Lister basically sees him fighting and goes up to him and says, "Hey, you've got some real good potential. Why don't you come and train at my gym in Paris?"
And there it is. He gets his French.
Before he even got to the second syllable of Paris, Eugene was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm in."
Yeah. He's a young adult who's been obsessed with France his whole life.
Right, yeah. Yeah, he's finally getting to France. And so he gets to Paris, he starts training, and he starts winning, like, real good money in prize fights. And it's looking like he's got a really good boxing future ahead of him. There's just one problem. He gets to Paris in 1914.
I don't correlate the significance. You'll have to explain.
Oh, you will in a second. In 1914, a Serbian nationalist shot and killed the crown prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, setting off a powder keg of alliances, militarism, and nationalism, which resulted in a 4-year-long war in which an entire generation of European men were shot to death and blown apart by heavy explosives. World War I, baby, and he arrives just in time.
Fuck.
In late summer 1914, though, nobody knew that this would be the result. In France, the idea going around was that this was going to be one big, quick victory to take back French lands that had been stolen by Germany during the Franco-Prussian War. They'd go back, they'd get Alsace-Lorraine back, and then, they'd all be home by Christmas. That was the idea. Anyways, so yeah, everybody in France, quick in and out, get Alsace-Lorraine back, bring our boys home, and we'll have a big party afterwards. Eugene, having fallen in love with his newly adopted country, even though this was just months after he'd arrived in the country, as soon as war broke out, he went and started trying to enlist.
Question, is the U.S. usually the only country that offers people who fight for them citizenship, or is that a way he could have realistically earned his citizenship?
No, okay. It's not very common. America is kind of unique in that. But in France, there is one way that you can earn French citizenship through military service, which is actually the only way that you're allowed to enlist in the French military if you're not a French citizen. And that is the French Foreign Legion.
Is that what he did?
That is what he did. First, he tried to go and enlist in the regular army, and they said, no, not only are you not a French citizen, you don't even have documentation. You don't have a passport or paperwork or anything. You shouldn't even be here. Why are you even coming to us? So then after that, he starts asking around and he finds out about the Foreign Legion. And not only will he be able to serve France, but when he's done serving, they will actually give him French citizenship.
Fuck yes.
Which was A-okay by him. And that's actually still a thing, too. You can, I could go right now and enlist in the French Foreign Legion. If for some godforsaken reason they actually decide to take me, if I serve for 5 years, once I get out, I'll have French citizenship.
Not that you would want that, but
You know what? I'm gonna make this a pro-French episode just for, I'm feeling it's Christmas time. I'm feeling generous. I'm the French people. French people are not the bad guy in this episode.
they are not. They're actually the cool guys for a good amount of it. Like if you count him.
Well, Eugene Bullard seemed to think French people were cool, and he's cool, so I'm going to take his word for it for this one. So, anyways, after being rejected from the regular army, he goes and tries to enlist in the French Foreign Legion. The Legion rejects him because he is only 18, and you have to be 19 to enlist in the Legion.
Rip.
So he waits a few months until October 1914 when he turns 19. The day of his birthday, literally the morning of his birthday, he wakes up, puts on his clothes, freshens up a little bit, and then walks directly to the Legion base. I think they used to have a station in Paris, but now it's in Lyon, but back then I think they had a station in Paris. I think that's where he enlisted. But yeah, he goes and he enlists, and they bring him in. Actually, sorry, I know a little bit more about the French Foreign Legion than I probably should, because they're endlessly fascinating to me as an idea. And at one point, I was actually seriously considering joining.
What? New Derek lore just dropped?
Listen, this was a very weird time in my life. This was the period of time between when I left Texas A&M and when I went to NEO. This was, I was not in a good state of mind at this point in my life because I was severely depressed from having been kicked out of my dream school. And I had tried to enlist in the U.S. military, and they had rejected me twice because I had taken ADHD meds in high school. And so I was still looking out for a place where I could get sort of like that military lifestyle that I craved so much. And I found out that the French Foreign Legion will take pretty much anybody. And so I just did a shitload of research about them. And I know way more about the Foreign Legion than I really have any right knowing.
Okay.
But yeah, so even today, it doesn't matter where you come from. You can show up at the gates of their headquarters and knock on the gate, and they will come out, do an entrance interview, a basic physical test, and if nothing shows up, you don't even have to have a passport. They won't ask you for any documentation. They will just ask you for your name and your birthday. And they will do a basic background check where they will check to make sure that your birthday is accurate. Beyond that, they do not care.
Damn.
You could be fleeing. You could be coming there just to, just for adventure, just to see what it's like, or you could be fleeing murder charges in your home country. They don't give a shit, and they frankly do not want to know. And yeah, so you can do that, go to their country, and if everything passes, then they will train you, put you in your uniform, and then you serve 5 years, and then you're allowed to have citizenship. The one thing that finally made me decide not to try to go to France to join the Foreign Legion was the fact that they had started rejecting American candidates. because Americans...
So you didn't think you had a chance? That's why you didn't?
Well, yeah, the thing is that they started rejecting a lot of Americans who came to enlist because Americans are like 10 times more likely to go AWOL and just leave than any other nationality. So,
oh, okay. Not the reason why I thought they started rejecting Americans, but okay.
yeah, because a lot of Americans will go thinking like, well, I'm out of the U.S. Army, but I'm not really like doing much successful with my civilian life right now. Why don't I go and give this a try? And then they go and they find out that not only are they dealing with all of the same stupid bullshit that they had to deal with in the U.S. Army, but also they're given the worst gear in the French Army. They're given the lowest pay in the French Army. And they don't speak the language. They have to learn it. And they get
I mean, that would be a smart idea. Learn the language of where you're going, but most people don't think that far ahead.
well, no, because they teach you the language during training.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you're required to learn it. You're not required to know it when you show up. But on top of all the usual shit that you're dealing with, you're also having to learn a completely new language. For other countries, that's fine. Like people from other countries, because what they're fleeing from is worse than anything they'll put up with in the Foreign Legion. But for Americans, we have the United States to come back to, and the United States is pretty goddamn cushy compared to a lot of the world.
True.
So there's a lot of motivation for Americans to just drop the bullshit and leave to go back to the U.S., whereas that there's not that same motivation for a lot of other countries.
True enough. True enough.
Anyways, so yeah, Eugene goes, and on his 19th birthday, he enlists in the French Foreign Legion. He does his training, and he is placed in the 3rd Marching Regiment on a machine gun crew. And so he is now going into battle as a machine gunner. And he would finally see combat for the first time in the spring of 1915, which is really bad.
Yeah.
Spring of 1915 was actually all of 1915. I think, if I remember correctly, 1915 was the deadliest year of the war.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Because that was the start of several of the biggest offensives before they realized that these offensive things were not going to work. And specifically that period, it was the opening of the Somme front. It was the first and second Battle of Ypres, and it was the beginning of the Battle of Verdun. It was a real fucking bad time to be a soldier in Europe during this time.
I'd fucking imagine.
So while he was on the Somme front, his machine gun unit was placed on a flank at their position during a German assault. The intent was to try to overrun these defensive positions to force the enemy back, and then the Germans would bring in reserves as a fresh reinforcement in order to block any counterattack, so that they could firmly secure upper ground before they pushed on towards Ypres. So he's on the left flank. He's got his sector of fire that he himself alone. I mean, he's the one firing the machine gun. He's got a few guys in his squad that are like feeding him ammunition, running around, grabbing ammunition. But it's him on the machine gun. He's firing it, and if he fucks up, the Germans overrun this flank, and if they overrun the flank, they overrun the whole goddamn line.
God, shit. I can't imagine the pressure you would be like to feel under that.
Yeah, the stakes are high, and they last for like 9 hours. He does this for like a whole day and night.
God damn.
During this time, he kills literally dozens of German soldiers. He has no idea how many specifically, but he kills more men than you can fathom being dead in one place, and he killed them.
The amount of, like, psychological guilt. Like, it's war, you have to do it, but, like, just imagine that weighing on your conscience. Fuck.
Right, yeah. Which, I don't know if he ever has an issue with that, though. Because in his mind, he's always, like, firmly convinced he's doing this for France. And he never has a moral qualm about it. It might have fucked him up in some way. I'm sure you can't do something like that without it fucking you up, but I don't think it fucked him up morally. Yeah.
Not many people are caught in Hill where they'll proudly proclaim they killed 50 men.
Yeah, no. So, eventually, while he's firing this machine gun he's firing, it's an old, like, 1895 Maxim. And the way that those old Maxims, like the first generation of Maxim machine guns worked, is that the barrel was encased in a water tube. And you would pump a whole bunch of water in there, and then as you're continuously firing, the water would boil and displace the heat away from the barrel so the barrel wouldn't warp.
So what you're saying is a water-cooled gun?
Yes, it is a water-cooled gun.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's very inefficient. The reason we don't do it now is because
it's impractical as fuck.
Yeah, the reason we don't do it now is because the metals that we have. One thing, we make guns out of a lot better metal now. And for another thing, there's no situation that most soldiers with those kinds of machine guns will find themselves in where they're firing as much as they are in World War One.
True.
There's it's very rare that a soldier in the late 20th or the 21st century will ever find themselves in a position where they're shooting the same machine gun for 9 hours straight.
Oh, fuck no.
It does not happen. But they needed that for World War One because that's the kind of war they were fighting. The problem is, you gotta refill the water.
Often.
Because the water boils and the steam can get out.
Yeah.
And so eventually, as he's firing, 6 hours in, the machine gun starts to jam because the barrel has warped. Because all of the water has boiled away. They had just arrived there. They hadn't set up mess packs. They hadn't set up spare supplies, and so they hadn't set up their water source yet.
Damn.
So nobody had water handy. So Eugene comes up with this fucking ridiculous idea.
Ridiculous as in it's not dumb if it works, and it worked.
Yes. So, because of the way that the gun is mounted, it's mounted on a tripod setup. He can't pull it down into the trench in order to refill the water. So he physically stands up out of the trench in full view of all of these couple hundred Germans that are currently trying to kill him. He stands up, drops his pants. He takes the nozzle out of the input for the water chamber, and he pisses in it.
Yep, that's some action hero shit. Take 3 sips.
So yeah, he refills the water chamber for his machine. By the way, I just want to mention, it started boiling the piss in there.
That's not smelling good at all, ever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when I read that. Imagine how fucking awful, because they still had 3 hours of that shit. How awful did that smell? Oh my god, that's terrible.
That probably was one of those foul things they ever smelt in their lives.
God, they gotta throw the gun away afterwards. There's no saving it.
No.
It's never gonna smell good again. You're never gonna be able to fire that thing without smelling boiling piss. So yeah, he refills it.
Forever known as the Piss Boy gun. Piss Gun Boy.
It's like the next level up from filling up a super soaker with piss.
The ultimate level up.
So yeah, he doesn't get shot doing this. I don't know if it was because the Germans had never seen a black man before and were befuddled seeing one in combat, or if they were befuddled at a black man pulling his dick out and pissing in his machine gun. Also, this is maybe a little too much detail, but, like, I can't imagine that he had to, like, actually, like, put his dick up to the nozzle. Because the nozzle would have been, like 200 degrees.
Yeah, it would. He had to have good aim, is what we're saying.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been able to put his dick, because it was hot enough to boil the water. I don't think he's touching that with his dick. He'd have to just aim it.
He had to have good aim. Let's leave it at that.
So yeah, one way or another, he doesn't get shot doing this, and it works, and eventually, after 9 hours of fighting, the Germans finally pulled back. A couple weeks after this, it is Christmas Eve, 1914.
And this is what makes it our Christmas episode. This next, maybe 5 minutes.
Surprise, motherfuckers, it's a Christmas episode. It is I, the Grinch.
To sneakily put in the Christmas theme this week, this month, whatever week, month, whatever you want to say.
Everybody meet in no man's land and join hands and join us in our Whoville song. Audores, da da da. Anyways.
Everyone loves the idea of the Christmas Day truce, but that's all there really is to it. Like, hey, we're gonna celebrate Christmas, and then we don't want to kill each other now.
I like the idea. I like reading about the Christmas truce because it really reminds me how fucking stupid the war was.
War in general has always been so fucking stupid.
Yes, but I think people don't really, specifically World War I, I think people don't really appreciate, how obviously stupid and needless and unnecessary that this war was, and how obvious that became on Christmas of 1914. Everybody talks about, the horrible, physical tragedy, the humanitarian tragedy that was the war, or all of the geopolitics or sociology or anthropology or all of that goes into the history of the war. But nobody really, just sits down and really thinks about the fact that what Europe had essentially made of itself was a social technology that was designed for the purpose of turning 20 million teenagers into pink meat in the mud.
Yeah, that's basically what happened.
And the reasons behind this machine existing was that one family of monarchs were beefing over a bunch of pieces of dirt.
Basically, yeah.
A bunch of inbred hemophilic freaks who used to go to Christmas parties with their families to meet up with each other were now sending millions of young men to go and be turned into fucking hamburger meat.
Because they fifis got hurt.
For the purpose of grabbing a few extra bits of land.
Yeah, although you can literally describe any war as that for the most part, that are in substitute land for, hey, this resource that the other place coveted.
Anyways, it is Christmas Eve of 1914. On many parts of the Western Front, German soldiers started putting up Christmas trees over their trenches, and then, they'd light some candles, and they'd put them up on the sandbags at the lip of the duck boards. And they would get together, they'd start passing out, passing out cigarettes, passing out, shots of good brandy and, some mulled wine. And they'd get together, they'd start singing Christmas carols. And, fun fact, I don't know if you knew this, but all of the Christmas carols that we sing in the English language, almost all of them are imported from Germany.
That is interesting.
Yeah, almost all like all of those old Christmas carols, nearly all of them were written in Germany and then brought to England and then eventually the U.S. And so all of the British and French soldiers on the other side, they started hearing this singing, especially the British soldiers, and they were like, "Hey, we know that song. Hey, that's God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. That's Good King Wenceslas. It's yeah, we know that songs." And so the British soldiers and a lot of the French soldiers as well, they'd start singing the same songs in their trenches, and eventually they'd start to harmonize. And the Germans and the Entente forces, they'd start singing together and harmonizing, and then eventually, like on different parts of the line, one brave soldier would finally decide to take a chance, and he'd stick his head up over the trench, and then he'd meet the eyes of a soldier on the other side doing the same thing, and they'd wave at each other, and then they'd start shouting back and forth, trying to talk to each other, and eventually they'd get out of the trench, and then their buddies would follow behind them, and then they'd come out into no man's land, and they, it was a little awkward at first, like, we were trying to kill each other like 12 hours ago, and now we're just kind of standing here, kind of singing,
vibing.
Yeah, we're vibing, we're singing Christmas carols, and then eventually they start like, "Hey, I got some good cigarettes. I bet you don't get good tobacco in Germany right now, what with all of the blockading trade, but we still got tobacco coming in from Jamaica if you wanna have some." And so they would give the Germans some cigarettes, and the Germans would offer them like some good German liquor. They'd trade back and forth. A lot of the German soldiers would know English because it was very common for even like regular everyday citizens in Germany. They'd send their kids over to England to study for a couple of years. So a lot of German soldiers actually spoke English, and eventually they'd talk more, and then they got a little drunk. They'd start singing Christmas carols, and then somebody would pull out a soccer ball, and they'd set up a game of football and use each trench line as a goal.
I didn't know they played that like sports like games. I thought it was more like card or like other stuff. That's fucking cool.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah, and then you'd have like a few like casualty parties that would a casualty crews that would go out, and while the fighting was not happening, they'd go out,
gather their fallen, the dead.
Yeah, they'd gather, because for the one thing, you're not going to get a lot of opportunities to go and grab them otherwise. For another thing, everybody's standing around trying to celebrate Christmas. It's kind of bumming them out to be surrounded by their dead friends.
That tracks.
Yeah. So in a lot of parts of the line, this Christmas truce, which included best estimates are around 100,000 troops total on each side, participated, just in different areas, like spontaneously all across the Western Front. And in some places it only lasted through the night, and then the next day Christmas Day, they went back to trying to kill each other. In other places, they waited a couple days. In some places, they didn't start shooting again until New Year's.
They always talked about it like almost no one who participated in the actual truce would actually go back to conflict at their specific location, because like they knew they had to still fight the other side, but like having gotten to know the people across the lane, they wouldn't want to like actually fight those specific people.
That was a fear that was had by a lot of the general officers at like the highest ranks of both sides. And so to preempt that, they ended up pulling a lot of units off the line and redeploying them elsewhere.
Okay.
But for the units that didn't get redeployed, they had absolutely no trouble going back to trying to kill each other. There's no reports that like they ever had.
That sucks, but hey ho.
It does suck, yeah. And that's just a part of It's just a part of human psychology. It's how we train soldiers. Like, you can see them as human, but then that's like part of military training. You could just switch that off.
You're right. I hate that that is a true fact about human psychology. Hey, they're not humans. I can kill them.
Yeah, it's not even a conscious like they're not human. It's just like you fall into the habit and the muscle memory of your training, and you no longer like you don't even
There's some subconscious they're not human going on because to be able to turn it off that easy, it is subconscious. It's not like conscious thought, but like there is some of that there.
yeah, yeah. It's like subconscious, but like consider like when you're driving, like when you're driving on a highway, your brain isn't consciously thinking there's a person in that car that is passing me on the shoulder. You're thinking, oh, there's the big metal box that if I hit them, if I hit them, I die. So I got to watch out for it. It's that kind of thing. Like you turn off the part of your brain that's like, oh, there's a person in there, and you switch on like, oh, this is what I have to do to like be safe around this thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But yeah, I also included a few specific stories that I thought were really interesting. There's one story where a British captain came out during the Christmas truce, and specifically, this captain had lost a large number of his men under his command to one specific German sniper. And he really wanted to meet this sniper because he was just fascinated by the idea that one guy could be this good a shot, and never be retaliated against. And so he searched around for a little bit. He started asking some of.
I thought you were, the way you just started that off. I was like, oh, is this going to be the secret assassination of the Christmas Day truce?
No. This is honestly kind of weirder. And so he started asking some of the German officers, like, hey, we've had this one sniper has been able to kill, like, a large number of my guys. I'd like to know who it is, at least. And one of the officers was like, oh, yeah, that's Fritz or whatever over there. And he turns, and the sniper that they're talking about looks like he's 15.
Fuck!
He was 18. He had just turned 18. He enlisted when he was 17. He'd killed 30 people.
Oh god, that's gonna fuck with him later in life, I bet.
He did not survive the war.
Aww.
So this British captain walks up to him, and this kid doesn't speak any English, and so he's kind of he gets one of the officers, and they kind of translate back and forth. And anyways, so this captain is like having one of the German officers kind of translate between them. They kind of start getting to talking, and eventually the captain he pulls out a couple cigars, and he chops the tips of both of them. He gives one to this kid who's killed like 30 of his guys, and lights them up, and they share a smoke together, even though they never really actually shared a word with one another.
That is both endearing and fucked up at the same time.
It's so bizarre to think about, isn't it? It's so weird.
Oh, yeah.
And then 2 days later, they went back to trying to kill each other. In fact, that same sniper made several shots at that same captain.
Jesus Christ.
Like later on. Never got him, but the captain survived the war. As far as they're able to tell, the sniper did not survive the war. There's another story. This one's a little more lighthearted, but there was one British soldier who had been a barber back in England, and throughout that night, Christmas Eve, he spent most of the night offering free haircuts to the German troops because none of them had been able to groom for a couple weeks, and so all of their beards and hair were starting to grow out a little too long. And so he just spent the whole night, like a German soldier would like take off his hat and kneel in front of this guy who had like his early primitive like handheld razor, and would just like cut up like tidy up their hair real quick, and then give them like a quick straight razor shave. No, these were actually like very similar to like modern electric razors. I think they might have actually been electric. I'm not sure exactly like how they function, but they looked like modern razors. They had like a length guard.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically how the Christmas truce went down. They did that. They went back to trying to kill each other a few days later, and then the following year, a couple. It happened the following year in 1915. It happened on a couple parts of the line, but here's the thing: by that point in the war, 1915, and then especially by 1916, the war had gotten really bitter, and neither side were really keen on giving up any of their good cigarettes to people that had murdered a bunch of their friends and had been because in 1914 they'd been at war for a few months. By 1916 they'd been at it for over 2.5 years of each side's nations being ground to tiny like thin nubs, and entire like cohorts, classes, villages full of young men who had been brutally butchered in no man's land. They didn't have any fond feelings for the guys on the other side anymore by that point. And so that's why the Christmas truce was pretty well just a 1914 event. Anyways, Eugene was there. He did that. We don't have any specific stories because he didn't talk about it, because it really was not a big part of his life. It did not stick out in his memory at all. He just mentioned that he was there for it. In early 1915, his unit fought at the Second Battle of Champagne. This time, they were on the offensive. And this is when he really starts to show what kind of soldier he is. This is when he starts to get, like, really actually famous for, like, the kind of crazy shit that he does. His experience in this battle was storming German trenches. He was at the spear tip of trench raids. And he was real fucking good at it, too.
Nice.
Now he's killed already dozens of men with machine guns. Now he's killing probably also dozens of men, but this time he's looking them in the eyes when he does it.
Shit.
He is coming up to them, he can see the terror and panic in their eyes as he shoots them, or stabs them, or bludgeons them. Like, he is in it. By his own words, as Eugene himself described it, the biggest challenge that he had fighting in trench raids was because they were usually at night. A lot of the trenches that he fought in were so densely packed with Germans trying to kill him that whenever he would kill one of them, they wouldn't fall down because there were so many people packed into the trenches trying to get to him.
God damn.
And so in the dark, he could never be sure if he'd actually killed somebody, because their body would stay standing up, kind of fallen limply against the mass of other German bodies around him.
That is fucked. All caps.
That is insane. That
is fucked, all caps.
That is like in like in Lovecraftian horror, you see something that just breaks your mind and drives you insane because your brain is not able to comprehend it. That's that's some real life eldritch shit.
Yeah. That's more incomprehensible than Lovecraft's actual horrors.
He did this type of fighting for about 2 months. He did not suffer a single injury.
God damn.
That was notable.
That's all. You know what? Surviving that with no injuries is some action hero shit. I've got to open a new beer first.
That's 3 sips, right?
Yes.
What made the fact that he wasn't wounded once at all during the Battle of Champagne was the fact that his unit suffered some of the highest rates of casualty of any French unit during World War I.
What?
The division that his unit, the third marching regiment of the Foreign Legion, was attached to a unit that was partially composed of colonial troops from Morocco. And it was kind of a mix of colonial troops, Foreign Legion troops, and regular army troops. It was called the 1st Moroccan Division. The 1st Moroccan Division began 1915 with 21,000 troops. They ended 1915 with 10,000.
Holy shit!
Over 50% casualties for an entire division.
That's fucking insane!
Those are World War II Eastern Front numbers. Those are numbers that you'll see replicated in like 20 years with like bombers, like bomber planes. They suffered so many so many casualties that the division was pulled off the line and put into reserve because it couldn't really effectively function as a division anymore. And he lived through that without a scratch on him.
What the fuck is this man?
He's a real-life superhero. I don't know what the fuck else to say.
He's like that one, I don't remember their name. He's like that one Marvel character where her superpower is luck, but like a real-life equivalent of that. Domino.
Oh, yeah. So, when the 1st Moroccan Division was pulled back, all of the foreign volunteers in the division were allowed to transfer into regular French army units if they wanted to. Not many wanted to.
Of fucking course not.
Eugene was one of the ones that wanted to.
Excuse me.
So Eugene transferred to the 170th Infantry Regiment. So now he's in like he's out of the Foreign Legion, he's in the regular army now. The 170th already at this point had a reputation as some of the best trench fighters in the entire French army.
Fuck yes.
They were kind of seen as like looking back on it, they were kind of seen as like proto special forces. Like later on in the war,
Damn.
Yeah, like later on in the war, the Germans would start to develop these special units called shock troopers, not shock troopers, stormtroopers, which were specifically trained to hop into trenches and fight hand to hand. The 170th kind of developed those same tactics organically.
Wow. That's...
Like, they kind of came up with those same tactics on their own. And they were fucking scary for the Germans to fight against.
That's crazy.
Yeah. The rest of the French army had given them the nickname Les Hirondelles de la Mort, which is French for the Swallows of Death.
That is metal as fuck.
That is metal as fuck.
I'm
this
drinking
is where...
to that. I'll take a sip for that.
Hell yeah. That is where Eugene would get his most famous nickname. He came to be called the Black Swallow of Death.
Yep, I remember that nickname.
In spring of 1916, the 170th were rotated into Verdun, which is probably one of the most ominous sentences I have ever said on this show, if you know anything about Verdun. Verdun was quite possibly the worst battle of the First World War. It is strongly in contention, because not only was it some of the most brutal and disorienting and violent fighting of the entire conflict on any side, in any front, that level of violence and intensity was sustained for nearly 2 years. What?
For our audience, we did not realize until that point of the recording that I was actually recording through my webcam, so there's going to be a noticeable increase in audio quality on my side.
Very much so. We think the last several episodes have had that happen, and I just got done laughing my ass off.
I'm so fucking mad. Anyways, so the Battle of Verdun, it was definitely the longest battle of the war. It lasted from February 1915 to December of 1916.
Good God.
Yeah, it involved millions of troops fighting along a few miles of trench line, fighting over a hill overlooking the city of Verdun. By the end of the battle, after nearly 2 years of fighting, almost 1 million men would be dead or wounded.
Fucking Christ, that's an atrocity.
The fighting was so brutal that the French army was forced to constantly rotate units in and out of the front line in 2-week rotations, because if they left a single unit there for too long, it would just be destroyed. It would be left completely, incapable of fighting.
Good God.
A downstream effect of this was that nearly every unit in the French army at some point fought at Verdun.
Yikes.
And so this became not just like, oh yeah, I fought in the war, but my brother was at Verdun and he has stories. No, every single French veteran that you talked to after the war had a story about fighting at Verdun. It was a national event. Like, every single person in France was directly touched by the Battle of Verdun. To give you an idea about how bad Verdun was, the original, at the outset when the Germans first launched their offensive, the first goal of the offensive was to capture and secure a fortress there called Fort Douaumont. After 4 weeks later, 1 month into this battle that was originally launched in order to capture this fort, the fort did not exist.
Holy fuck.
Because the Germans would come in and they would take it, and then it would be shelled by the French. And then the French infantry would come in and they'd take the fort, and then the Germans would shell it. After a month of this, it had been shelled so much that there wasn't even the foundations of the fort left.
I can fucking imagine. Jesus Christ.
And the battle over that fort lasted for another 20 months.
Good God.
In the same spot, too. Like, the fort was gone, but they were still in the spot where the fort was, fighting over the same bit of land. 1 million people died.
That is insane. Yet somehow Eugene has not sustained an injury in this war yet.
But now he's at Verdun. The Battle of Verdun, Eugene was hit in the face by shrapnel from an artillery shell. The shrapnel sliced open his right cheek and destroyed all of the teeth on that side of his face.
What you're saying is I spoke too fucking soon.
Yes, literally next sentence. Somehow, Eugene stood back up, got bandaged, and then the next thing he did was volunteered himself to lead a dangerous mission where he had to run a quarter mile through machine gun fire and artillery in order to...
So what you're saying is his first injury of this war is immediately followed by some action hero shit. Well, let's take those 3 sips now. Let's finish up your story, then we'll take our shot.
Yes. So, he leads this small team through machine gun fire and artillery bombardment a quarter mile to get back to their HQ so that they can get intel that has been collected by their headquarters. They get through it, they grab it, and then they run all the way back, having sustained no injuries.
What the actual fuck? This man is built different, all caps.
Yes. The next day, he's hit by another artillery shell.
What the fuck?
Damages his vertebrae, dislocates 2 ribs, and blows a chunk of flesh out of his thigh the size of a baseball. He is now no longer able to walk for a little bit. So they pull him off the line, and he is sent to a field hospital to be treated. So he gets his field dressings and stuff in the field hospital, and then he's put on a truck, and he's taken back to Paris, where he's put up in a proper military hospital. They perform reconstructive surgery on his face. He gets fitted for some denture work on that side of his face. He is going to have a giant obvious scar across the right side of his right cheek for the rest of his life. While he's in the hospital, he is awarded the Croix de Guerre, which is at the time was the highest honor in the French military.
This dude is a real life action hero.
He is. He's not done.
Oh, I know. You ready for that shot?
Yeah, let's do it. Prost.
Cheers.
This guy is so cool. We haven't even got to the bit that made him famous yet.
I'm really glad I had you pick this topic. I know it's barely a Christmas episode, but this guy's just so fucking insane.
Sure feels like Christmas to me.
I mean, we're eating good tonight, baby.
So yeah, Army Hospital in Paris. His face is reconstructed, and he starts going through physical therapy to be able to walk again, which he eventually does. It's very difficult for him. He walks with a slight limp. He's not as fast as he used to be. His pretty much the only reason he was able to ever...
After receiving trauma of that level, understandable.
Right. Probably the only reason he was ever able to walk again is because he was already in incredible shape before he even got to that point. So,
yeah, he was already built like a brick shit house.
So this next bit that I'm going to say, from this point forward in his life, he is going to have an unnatural knack for finding the most famous and convenient people to be able to push forward his career and put him into more interesting scenarios and be able to make friends with them.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about how he basically just schmoozed his way through this next part of his life. Not in a bad way, but
yeah, he just keeps running into famous people. really famous people and then making friends with them, and then ends up like going to incredible new heights as a result because of the access that he gets. While he's in the hospital, the man that's convalescing in the bed next to his was the commandant of the French Air Service, the guy who was in charge of France's Air Force. And they get to be friends.
Wow.
And they hit it off. And Eugene expressed how disappointed he was that he would be unable to continue serving now that he was wounded. The commandant said that he could still fire a machine gun, but if he was in a plane, he wouldn't have to walk to get there.
This guy's like, hey, you want to kill some more people? Fuck yeah, here you go.
And so he said, if you want, I can give you a letter of recommendation to go apply for the air gunnery school, and that should get you in to train to shoot machine guns from an airplane. And so Eugene, of course, here's the thing you're going to find out about Eugene. Any time that he has the ability to go and fight in a war, he is going to immediately take it.
That sounds like his MO. That sounds like him.
There's never a time in his life when he's not trying to find the next opportunity to go and fight in a war.
This man knew hands, and that was it. Proverbial hands, obviously, but still.
Yeah. He sent in his application to air gunnery school while he was still in the hospital, and received his application acceptance and his reassignment orders before he was even discharged.
Damn.
Yeah. So he was discharged from the hospital. He was given 2 weeks of leave to finish off his convalescence before he would be going to school. He spent that entire 2 weeks drinking with all of his friends in Paris.
So he went on a 2-week bender afterwards.
Oh, yeah. He loves going on benders.
This man's my fucking hero.
He's so cool. Famously, during one of these nights of drinking, a friend of his in the Paris boxing scene, who was a very, very rich American, this guy bet him $2,000 that the French military would never allow him to become a fighter pilot.
I remember this shit.
Despite not having, because $2,000 is like $150,000 today.
It's a fuck off amount of money.
Despite the fact that Eugene would never in a million years had ever hoped to see a $2,000, he took up this bet because he's just built like that. Like, he took the bet because he knew, yeah, I'm going to end up becoming a pilot.
This man did not know how to doubt himself.
No, doubt was not in his vocabulary. And not just because he stopped school at 5th grade. Very loud and correct buzzer. So, on day one of gunnery school, he happened to run into one of the most famous men in France.
Sip.
The guy he ran into, his name was Jean Navarre. Jean Navarre was already by this point a war hero. There's a very likely chance that he is the very first fighter ace in human history.
Wow.
And he had already shot down a number of German planes up to this point. A very successful, very famous stereotype fighter pilot. They run into each other on Eugene's first day at gunnery school. And as it turns out, Jean Navarre was really into boxing. And he was already a big fan, a big fan of Eugene when he was, he would go to Eugene's fights when he was boxing in Paris. And so he already knew Eugene. And Eugene already knew him. They just never met before. So they immediately, of course, every one of these stories, they immediately hit it off. They become fast friends. And Jean basically tells him, day one of gunnery school, hey, if you want to be a fighter pilot, I bet I can pull some strings. And that's what he does. He pulls some strings. He's like, hey, if you let Eugene Bullard here into fighter pilot training, I'll train him personally, and I think he's going to do good. He has my recommendation. And so they're like, cool, we trust you. You're the best fighter pilot in the French military. Sounds great to me. And so Eugene Bullard transfers from...
Any other scenario, this doesn't work out the way it does, and he doesn't become good, but somehow he gets good and just fucks off and has like action hero shit.
Yeah. So he transfers to fighter pilot training. He trains personally under Jean Navarre, again, the best fighter pilot in the French military. And then he graduates and becomes a fighter pilot. After completing training, Eugene returns to his friend in Paris, who had bet the $2,000, and he collects his $2,000. And then the two of them go on another bender.
Of course they do.
At some point during the night, Eugene ends up gambling a little bit. You know, he's $2,000 burning a hole in his pocket. He's going to do a little gambling. So he goes and he plays a couple rounds of dice. And he wins a capuchin monkey in a game of dice.
I forgot about that. Holy fuck.
He gets a capuchin monkey. He names the monkey Jimmy. And then he takes the monkey to a tailor and has it fitted with a leather flight jacket, goggles, and a head cover so that the monkey can go up with him on missions in his plane.
I also forgot that part too. Holy shit.
And
my man was insane, but he knew style.
Yeah. He's so fucking cool, man. Before...
All I can think of the Team 4-Star Dragon Ball Z abridged, so fucking cool! From the from the Broly movie, sorry.
Yeah. Before his first flight mission, Eugene has his plane painted with a heart being stabbed with a dagger, and it has the words Tout s'enquoise rouge, which atrocious accent, but it's French. That translates as all blood runs red.
That's fucking metal. God damn it. Why can't this man do something that's not fucking metal?
It's so cool. And this is how he becomes the very first black fighter pilot in human history. And he's doing it in a plane that says all blood runs red.
And he's kicking ass and taking names while he's doing it.
Oh, he's so cool. He's so cool.
Argue, action hero shit, take 3 sips.
Here's the thing. Eugene is often considered famous as the first black fighter pilot, which is that is probably the most if you just had a list of his accomplishments, that's probably the most noteworthy thing on there. The first black fighter pilot. It was a very small part of his life. And honestly,
like I said, this man is like the real life equivalent of Forrest Gump, because the amount of shit he does sounds like it's made up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's the issue that I run into is that I set up this script as I was writing it to try to set it up kind of one way, and that was kind of focusing on him as like the first black fighter pilot, which I was fully convinced would be like the biggest part of his life. He didn't even consider it the biggest part of his life.
He didn't even think his life was notable.
He really didn't know. He thought, till the day he died, he just considered himself like a humble infantryman. When he died, he requested he be died in his Foreign Legion uniform. Not in his pilot jacket. Not in like the suit he wore later on when he was a spy. He wanted to be buried as a humble private in the army.
One of my favorite stories about him won't come up till almost the very end. And I won't spoil what it is, but I'll tell you when you get to it in the story, because it's just such a luck of coincidence that there's no way it should have fucking happened, but it did, and it's awesome. And it's not luck, it's the elevator. That's my favorite part of the story. Not to make light of anything else in his life, because the only reason the elevator scene is as cool as it is because he is such a fucking badass the rest of his life before that.
So the reason I say it's not a big part of his life is because he would only be a fighter pilot for 3 months.
Jesus.
From September to November of 1917. He would fly a grand total of 25 missions. He himself claims that he shot down 7 German planes, which I personally believe because he was a very humble person. And I don't think that's something he'd lie about unless he actually did it. I think it actually happened, and he just took enough pride to bother mentioning it because from his perspective, that was shots that he fired in service to his beloved France.
Yeah, I can believe it. Like the amount of downplaying this man did, I don't care if that was the one time he puffed his numbers, because I don't think it would have been. Like, I mean, it's very possible, but the amount of like I'm just another guy like everyone else he did with the rest of his life, there's no way in hell that's the one outlying time he actually did puff his numbers.
The issue is that none of those downed planes could ever be verified, because to verify a plane, a successful aerial kill,
confirmed. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to get a confirmed kill, a confirmed down plane.
Yeah, the only way to really do it is by shooting the plane down in your own territory so that the plane can actually be recovered. And all of the planes that he purportedly shot down were over enemy territory, and so they could never be recovered and confirmed. And so, as a result, those seven kills could never be confirmed, and only 2 of them have other eyewitnesses that can corroborate. So that's the issue. So he's usually officially, by like the French military, he's credited with 2 possible kills. In all likelihood, it is very reasonable to believe he did shoot down all 7 of those, because just based on who he was, he probably wasn't lying. We just couldn't confirm it.
Well, we just went on a tangent before this, like, where I was like, there's no way in hell this is when he just started to puffer his numbers on anything. I just, it doesn't seem like the kind of guy where he would boast his numbers for that.
Yeah. Or who knows, maybe because being a fighter pilot usually comes along with it being really full of yourself. So maybe even if that wasn't important to who he normally was, maybe, he was around people that were kind of in that culture. Maybe he felt like he had to puff up the numbers, but personally, I don't really think he did. But whatever. He was a fighter pilot. Fighter pilots lie about their kills all the time. Anyways, late 1917, he's been a fighter pilot for 3 months. He entered a bar in Paris in his uniform, which now includes 15 medals.
Good God, this man's gonna knock himself out with his medals alone.
Yeah, if he jumps, he's going to give himself a black eye. 15 medals on his uniform, including the Croix de Guerre, which is, in the U.S. military is roughly the equivalent of the Distinguished Service Cross, which is like one step below the Medal of Honor.
Goddamn.
While he was drinking and having a grand night with some of his friends, a French officer, a racist French officer, really need to emphasize that, a racist French officer.
Oh, I fucking remember this story.
Approaches him and begins drunkenly yelling at him and berating him for wearing so many medals that he obviously couldn't have really earned on his own. Because, he's black. Eugene responds to this by punching the officer so hard that he loses consciousness.
I don't know what happened to the man afterwards, but I want to say he punched the racism out of him.
I want to see the look on his face when he shows up for the court-martial and finds out that all of the awards are real.
I hope he punched the racism out of this guy, because, like, you get punched by, like, a literal walking legend, you better just completely change your entire life outlook.
The French army has really gone woke. They're just handing out these Croix de Guerres like candy to anybody who asks for them, aren't they? So, anyways, Eugene was arrested and court-martialed because, he did kind of assault an officer, even if it was deserved. That's a big no-no when you're enlisted. The penalty for assaulting an officer as an enlisted man usually carries a sentence of 5 years of hard labor. However, due to the extenuating circumstances of the fact that Eugene was a decorated war hero who had single-handedly done more for the French war effort than entire regiments. But the other extenuating circumstance being that the guy he punched was a real asshole, which the court-martial recognized and put officially in their statement.
Yeah, you shouldn't have punched the guy, but he was a dick, so we're gonna go easy.
But the charge wasn't for assaulting an asshole. The charge was for assaulting an officer, which he did do. So, due to the extenuating circumstances, they gave him a lenient sentence. They transferred him out of his squadron and took away his flying privileges, his flying clearance, and they reassigned him back to the 170th Regiment. But this time, instead of frontline duty, because obviously he still can't walk right, they assigned him to what was called the Service Battalion, which meant that he was basically doing custodial work. So basically stuff like carrying mess equipment and cleaning facilities and things like that. So basically, for the rest of the war, for the better part of 1918 until the end of the war, He spent 11 months basically as a janitor slash handyman because he punched a racist.
Because he had to hit someone who had it coming. God damn it.
Yeah. So that fucking blows. He could have been an ace.
He probably would be.
And granted, to become an ace, you have to shoot down 5 planes and have the kills verified. But with 11 more months, by that time he'd already shot down 7 planes. He probably could have done that.
It was 3 months. He would have become an ace. Like, I have no doubt he would. Yeah.
He would have been an ace. That blows. That fucking sucks.
God damn it, racism.
The armistice ending World War I was signed on November 11th, 1918. Fun fact, the armistice was actually signed on November 10th. It was late at night on November 10th. They put into the actual document that the official moment that the war would end would be 11 o'clock on November 11th. So that'd be a nice even 11-11-11.
That's some nerd shit.
It is some nerd shit. As a result, there were about 12 extra hours that the war was still going on. And for some reason, all up and down the lines during that time, the all of the officers in charge just decided to expend as much of their ammunition as they still had sitting around. And so in that 12-hour period of time between when the armistice was signed and when it went into effect, it's believed that that extra 12 hours resulted in 5,000 more deaths.
Holy fuck!
They could have just put into the armistice that it begins the moment the document is signed. And they would have immediately sent off orders, stop firing right now, the war is over. And instead, they gave them an extra 12 hours, and they wanted to get the last of their energy out and use the extra explosives that they had, that would just be sitting around after that wasted. 5,000 more people died.
That's some bullshit.
I'm sorry. I bring that every time somebody mentions World War I armistice, or actually Veterans Day. Every time Veterans Day comes up, because Veterans Day is on November 11th. I bring it up every time because I think it's fucking awful. I think people need to remember that about Armistice Day.
It's some bullshit.
Armistice Day could have been November 10th, and there'd have been 5,000 more living veterans to be able to commemorate it. Anyways, the armistice ending World War I went into effect on November 11th, 1918. Now out of the military, Eugene tries to get back into boxing when he gets back to Paris. But due to his wartime injuries, he isn't as fast and spry as he used to be. Oh, excuse me. He isn't as fast as he used to be. So instead, he opens up his own boxing gym and he starts teaching boxing. And here's something interesting. It turns out when you were already like a pretty well-known boxer before the war, and then after the war, you're a famous, like nationally famous war hero, a lot of people want to come and train at your gym. They want to come find out what fighting is from the guy who did that. And so his gym is really popular.
No shit.
More popular than he ever could have hoped for. He had to start putting people on waiting lists for memberships. Because if he started giving out too many memberships, then his gym would be too full to actually use the space for anything.
He had to work within his physical limitation of space.
Right. So, because he's so successful, he's got some extra money, and also he has a bunch of the money from that bet he won. Again, $2,000 in 1918 is like
Goes a long fucking way.
that's like $150,000 today. So he took up all of the money he's made so far, and then he starts expanding, and he ends up buying a couple of nightclubs. So, same thing happens. Big famous war hero. People find out that he's running a bar, and they follow him from the gym. All of those, famous these now becoming famous boxers follow him to the bar so that they can hang out with him at the bar. And so now all of the most wealthy and politically powerful people in France who are living in Paris are like, hey, that bar is owned by a war hero, and all of the most famous athletes in France go there to drink. Let's go there tonight. And so this is how Eugene Bullard accidentally stumbles upon becoming one of the most powerful people in Paris.
Arguably, Action Hero Sips 3.
Fair. I'm just going to finish this off.
To be fair, one of your sips is probably 3 of mine, so.
9 sips now. Oh. Okay. All right. I'm done with that beer. I'm going to go back to my new comfort beer, which is Shiner Bock. Have you ever had Shiner Bock? Oh, it's really good. I always thought that it was just another shitty domestic like Budweiser or something. And then I actually tried it, and no, it's actually really fucking good. It's actually pretty damn good, like shockingly good for what it is. Which makes me happy, because a part of me was always afraid to try it because I thought I'd be disappointed by a beer, like a German beer from the Texas Hill Country. My homeland. I was always afraid if I ever tried it, I'd be disappointed with it. And, a little part of me would die with it. But no, turns out to be really good. And now my heart swells with pride.
Not that much pride.
I love you, Shiner Bock. Oh. It really does actually, it really does taste like home. Thank you, Shiner Bock. So, Eugene accidentally stumbles into becoming one of the most famous, or he was already the most famous, but one of the most powerful men in France, because he becomes like the de facto power broker between a lot of the most famous, or the richest and most powerful businessmen, politicians, celebrities. He becomes kind of the guy who is like the third party that kind of organizes negotiations, hosts meetings, mediates like disputes, like everybody.
He's like the mediator in political parties in France at the time.
Yeah, like everybody likes him and everybody trusts him, and so they know that. And here's the thing: on top of all of that, he's probably the only honest person in Paris.
Yeah, true.
So he can have all of this power and notoriety and connections, and still kind of be trusted with them, which makes him like really valuable as like a go-between for all of these different political and economic forces that are kind of running France in the interwar period. And it's a really weird place for a Black American who fled from basically was a refugee from Jim Crow, um, to suddenly find himself in a position where he's negotiating like all of the most powerful economic deals in the entire country.
Yet he still didn't think he was anyone special, and he was doing shit like that.
Yeah, and it makes like, of all things, I think this makes the fact that the situation he's in when he dies, I think it makes that all the more crazy that he ends up where he does. So during this time, Eugene ends up falling in love with a woman that he meets while he's running this bar. And he ends up marrying this woman. She is a white Parisian woman. Her family is from the second arrondissement in Paris, which is... Sorry, I just wanted to say that. I fucking love that. It's my favorite French word for some reason. It just feels so good coming off the tongue. Arrondissement. And then an arrondissement is... it's like a political division of... Paris has, I think, 20 arrondissements, which are like... Every one of those sections have like their own sort of like miniature municipal government, and then they're all kind of federated into one bigger municipal government that acts as like its own state within like the French system, the French like it's their own miniature political. Anyways, not important. He marries this white Parisian woman. Her name is Marcel Straumann, which is, I thought that was interesting. During this time, it's a very weird time in Paris because in France, because France, if you're not familiar, if you thought Germany had an anti-Semitism problem, France invented the anti-Semitism problem. But the political movements that would eventually become the Nazi Party, basically it's a sort of catch-all ideology for all of these different sorts of movements that were called. It was called political anti-Semitism. Political anti-Semitism began in France. And it began specifically with this event called the Dreyfus Affair, which was back in the 1870s, like right after the Franco-Prussian War. Paranoia in France was pretty high at that time because nationalism was running pretty hot because it's this French idea called revanchism. It's this idea that the nation has been wronged, and those wrongs need to be made right with blood, basically. And it was specifically in reference to the loss of this region in eastern France called Alsace-Lorraine to the Prussians, who then became the Empire of Germany. And so there was like this, basically there were people out in the streets like swearing blood oaths to hate the German for the rest of their lives. Like they were so fucking mad about losing Alsace-Lorraine.
That sounds very cucky.
It's fucking dumb. It's really dumb especially because at the time, it's different now because now Alsace-Lorraine has been part of France for 100 years. People there now consider themselves France. Back then, it was mostly German. I mean, the people that live there now all still have German names. They speak French. They call themselves French. Back then, they were still German. Don't get me wrong. There was a mix. Like there were French people there. There were German people there. Mostly German. So, like, is this really about like French nationhood, or do you just want that strip of land?
It's always been the strip of land.
Anyways, out of this revanchist movement, this event happened where a Jewish army officer in the French army named I forget his first name. I forgot his first name. His last name was Dreyfus. He was accused of sending French army military secrets and selling them to the Germans. And there was no proof of this. There's no evidence of this at all. But he was arrested, court-martialed, and imprisoned for like a decade and stripped of all of his rank and privileges, and he was refused his military pension and stuff like that. And French politics basically kind of became bipartisan. It was kind of split evenly but down the middle between the Dreyfusards, who were political anti-Semites, and the anti-Dreyfusards, who were like opposed to it, like the political persecution of this guy because he was Jewish, and then broadly just became an anti-political anti-Semitism group with like vaguely like liberal progressive politics. And so that, anyways, I explain all this because this is a history podcast, and that's a very interesting bit of history. And also because I think it's very interesting during this time specifically when anti-Semitism was very much having a sort of moment in French politics. After World War One, you get a lot of the kind of the revanchist ideas because now France had Alsace-Lorraine back. And so those sort of anti-Semitic ideas had to kind of go elsewhere, and they went into nascent proto-fascist movements that were starting to crop up in France at the time, especially like the National Front. And so this was a period of time when there was a lot of just blatant out in the streets anti-Semitism in France. And Eugene, this American black man who is a famous war hero in France and kind of became like a hero of like French nationalism, marries a Jewish woman. I think that's really interesting. I'd like to explore that. I'd like to know more about their relationship and kind of how it was seen in public. Unfortunately, I didn't find a lot about it. So,
I mean, this man's life story wasn't told for decades because they didn't think his story was fucking real. Of course, something like that wasn't recorded.
Right, yeah. Anyways, he marries Marcel Straumann, who is the heiress to a wealthy hat-making family.
The fuck?
Yeah, they run a business where they make fancy hats for women.
I mean, just being an heiress of something like that is just kind of weird.
Well, Tucker Carlson is the heir to the chicken nugget fortune.
Tucker Carlson is just a fucking cuck.
He's a piece of shit. But I just think it's very funny that the guy who comes from chicken nugget money is also like the modern day 21st century American oh shit, what was his name? The guy who ran Der Stürmer in Nazi Germany. Anyways, fascist propagandist comes from a family that got rich off of chicken nuggets. I thought that was very funny. Anyways, so yeah, she's the heiress to a hat making fortune. The two of them end up having a son who dies at 6 months old from pneumonia.
Yikes.
Yeah, that unfortunate. After that, they would end up having two daughters, Jacqueline and Lolita. The two of them remained happily married for a little while until Marcel's parents died, and she got the fortune.
Ugh. She's like, I have money. Fuck you, I'm gone.
After she inherits this fortune, she goes to Eugene and she's like, we have money now. We have more money than we could ever hope to spend in our lives. I want you home. I don't want you working at this nightclub every night. I want you back home just retire early, sell off the nightclubs, and come back and just.
So what you're saying is she was like, I want to spend quality time together. We are set for life. Let's actually start bonding together. And he was like, be gone, wench.
No, actually, he was never described as like an absentee husband. He made time he deliberately skipped out on sleeping sometimes so that he could both work at his nightclub and spend time with his family. He sacrificed his own sleep just to be able to do that, and it's very like explicitly noted. So that the issue was not that he wasn't spending enough time with him or with his wife or his daughters. She just didn't want him working. And it didn't say explicitly, but I got the impression that she was kind of the opinion, or the implication that I got was that she was kind of embarrassed by being married to a black man who worked for a living. She wanted to be a rich heiress. She wanted to go to parties and put on the airs of a woman who comes from money and is high class. And she thought that being married to a black man who works for a living hurt that image. That is the impression that I got. I don't know if that's true. That's how I interpreted it.
I would not be surprised if you were right.
And so he refuses to do that because he doesn't just want to coast off of somebody else's fortune. To him,
there's also the fact that, like, even if you're set for life, no amount of hobbies, no amount of, like, there are having some kind of job or some kind of thing to put time and effort into is really hard to find even in modern times. Things that are quote unquote hobbies or whatever, having something else like an actual working job helps, like, just keeping you from feeling like you're stagnant, all that stuff.
Yeah. Here's the way I think about it. I can imagine Eugene Bullard doing literally anything he could possibly want. No matter how far-fetched it is, he would find a way to do it. I can picture him eventually going to the moon if I tried hard enough. The one thing that I cannot imagine him doing is sitting by himself in a room, a quiet room, alone, with his own thoughts.
Oh, fuck no.
That is the one thing I cannot imagine him doing, because either he will get bored or he will get terrified.
Honestly, this man almost sounds like ADHD to, like, the nth power. Because, like, how else do you have a story as insane as his?
You know, I think there's an argument for that, actually. Yeah, I can see it.
I don't make that based on any actual thing. That's just, like, the emotion of it.
Yeah. Anyways, the fact that he wants to continue to work and he doesn't like the idea of retiring early and coasting the rest of his life off of another man's fortune doesn't appeal to him. And this causes friction between him and his wife. And the friction eventually causes Marcel to just leave the family. Not just him, not just leave him. Like, it's not, here's the thing, they never get divorced because they're both Catholics.
I thought they did, but it's been a while since I've visited his story. But that makes sense.
Yeah, they're both practicing Catholics, so they don't believe in divorce, so they don't get divorced. She just leaves, and they never see each other again. And it's not a matter of, like, they separate, but she's still seeing the kids. She leaves the kids too. She never sees her daughters again.
That's fucked.
That is fucked. She abandoned her whole family so that she could enjoy her dad's wealth by herself. And this is very devastating to Eugene, to say the least. He is not... he gets a lot of, as he described it, he gets a lot of memories of his... when he looks at his daughters, he thinks a lot about when he lost his own mom. But he starts to think about it. He's like, what would be worse for my daughters if they found out that their mom had died, or if they found out that their mom had abandoned them because she didn't want to be in their lives? And so her daughters, who are still under 8 years old, both of them, he just tells them that their mom passed away. And doesn't tell them.
I mean, it's a lot easier to swallow than, hey, mommy just ran away.
Yeah. So now, on top of being a successful businessman, war hero, and power player in Parisian high society, he is now also a single father, which is rough.
It's not easy in any era, but with his life story, fucking hell.
He does make it work, though, because he's Eugene fucking Bullard.
I didn't say he didn't. This man takes the impossible and just that's not a word. Let's keep going.
Yeah. And he makes it work for over a decade. And then the whole world turns upside down. Gonna have a little bit of a jump scare here. Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany in 1932. Not elected, appointed Chancellor. He was appointed Chancellor by the conservative president, Paul von Hindenburg. In 1933, German President Paul von Hindenburg dies, and Hitler consolidates the power of both the chancellor and the president, both offices, into his own dictatorial position, becoming the undisputed leader of Germany and reshaping the nation in the vision of his Nazi party. A few years later, on September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland, kicking off the Second World War. In response, Britain and France both declare war on Nazi Germany. Early in the war, a number of German citizens, including members of the Nazi Party, still frequented his bar. Now here's the thing. At first, he wanted to kick them out. He wanted to ban them from entering his establishment. He did not want Nazis in his bar for obvious reasons, but multifaceted. First, he didn't want. He was fiercely he fiercely loved French, and the Nazis wanted to destroy what France was to him. For another thing, the Nazis did not like black people, to say the least.
No shit.
In fact, they thought so little of black people that black people weren't even high on their list of targets because they didn't see them as a threat. That's why a lot of Jewish people in Europe during the war suffered immensely. Obviously. Black people during the war definitely suffered a lot under Nazi occupation. A shockingly large number of black people in Europe survived the war. Because yes, they were explicitly targeted for persecution. They were often hunted down and sent to camps and things like that. But they weren't a target of extermination because they weren't seen as a threat. The Nazis who frequented Eugene's bar did not see Eugene as a threat because in their mind, he was too stupid to understand German. Here's the thing, though. You remember when he worked on that ship before the ship that eventually took him to Aberdeen, Scotland, brought him to Europe for the first time? That was a German ship.
And so he picked up on German, didn't he?
He learned German while he worked on that ship. And then he learned more during the war. He was fluent in German. He was fluent in French, and he's fluent in English. He knew 3 languages. And so what would happen is that the Nazis would come into his bar, and whenever a Nazi, especially a high-ranking Nazi, would come into his bar, he would he'd dismiss his bartender, and he'd go and he'd work behind the bar. And they would sit there, and they'd talk to each other in German, and they would have no idea that he was listening to everything that they said. And then, at the behest of the French government, he would then turn around and give them all of the information that he found out.
So this is when he turned super spy.
Yeah, this is when he becomes a spy. He gets a handler and everything. They have a handler for him. I can't remember her real name. Her code name is Kitty.
Agent Man.
He is a real, honest-to-God spy. Eugene Bullard is so fucking cool.
This man's life literally sounds like, hey, here's like 7 notable people throughout history that feasibly could like fit into being the same person. Let's squish them together. But no, he's actually that same person.
Here's the issue, though. Nobody could know that he was a spy for the French government. The Nazis couldn't know. And so he couldn't tell anybody. And so from the outside, for people who weren't in the know, what they saw was that Eugene was still letting Nazis into his bar.
Yep. And that fucked his reputation.
It destroyed his reputation. Overnight, he went from, as soon as the war started, he still kept letting them into his bar. He went from a great war hero to
absolute pariah.
One of the most hated collaborators in the city. But he was providing really valuable intelligence to the French government about what the Nazis were doing, because this is something I really couldn't figure out. Why were there still so many Nazis just walking around in Paris able to go to bars? Why didn't they just arrest them as the war started? That's the confusing bit that I wasn't able to find an answer to while I was doing research. But for some reason, they let the Nazis keep walking around in Paris, and they eventually would eventually make it to Eugene's bar, and then Eugene would report on what was going on to the French government. Anyways, he became so unpopular in Paris. One day, there was a local gangster, just a guy who was part of like an organized crime, like a crime organization in Paris. Here's the thing. In Paris specifically, a lot of what would eventually become like the underground French resistance during the Nazi occupation started off as organized crime, like mob.
That surprises me not. So where I got a lot of the information about this story originally didn't directly talk about it in a way that said there was organized crime, but it just got the vibes of organized crime.
Yeah. But it's weird that France was like that. Like all of the mafias in France were fiercely anti-Nazi. And then you look over at Italy and like all of the mobs, like the mob in Italy were all like deeply embedded in the fascist party. It's weird how different it was. Um, Anyways, one day a local gangster who hated Nazis and also saw Eugene as a traitor wandered into his bar pissed drunk at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. 2 in the afternoon, and he's pissed drunk. Walks into Eugene's bar shouting for him, demanding to talk to Eugene. Eugene hears this and he walks out and tries to greet the man and ask, what's going on? Why are you in here? Why are you yelling at my staff? Why are you yelling for me? He barely gets out a sentence before the drunk man pulls out a pistol and fires a single shot into Eugene's stomach.
That's a shot.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it is. God.
Cheers.
Prost. Ooh, beautiful. So yeah, this guy shoots him. What do you think Eugene does in response to that?
It's his fucking ass.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. He nearly beats this guy to death with a bottle while he is bleeding profusely from an open gunshot wound. And the only reason he doesn't just kill this man is because he passes out from blood loss.
This man's life was spared because the other guy bled out and passed out. Not even died, just passed out.
Yeah. God damn. So Eugene is rushed to the hospital where the doctor basically is like, listen, this bullet, it hit you and it went in and then it started bouncing around. It ricocheted all over the inside of you. Your intestines have more holes than Swiss cheese. I can patch you up, but there's no way it's not infected.
This is the kind of shit people don't normally survive.
Yeah. You're what's gonna happen is I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna patch you up. The bleeding has stopped. Something is gonna leak out of those stitches and it's going to infect your insides and you're going to die of sepsis. And there's just no stopping it. We don't have the technology to stop that. Eugene says no, and he lives.
My man told death not today, and death backed the fuck down.
He ordered his intestines not to leak shit into his torso cavity, and it obeyed him.
Basically.
Yeah, so he survives this.
This man stood and looked the Grim Reaper in his fucking eyes and said, fucking try me, and the Grim Reaper backed the fuck down.
Yeah, and it wasn't the first time he did that either. This is like the 8th or 9th time he's scared death off.
Oh.
So he gets out of the hospital and he's still recovering from getting shot when the Nazis invade France in June of 1940. So the war's already started, but it'd been kind of the Nazis were focused on occupying Poland there for a little while. But now they've finished that up with the help of the Soviet Union. Fun fact, the Soviet Union and the Nazis were allied to one another up until Operation Barbarossa launched off. And Stalin was so shocked that his old friend Adolf had betrayed him that he went and cried in his room for a week.
Wah, wah, wah.
Anyways, I just like to point that out because the Soviet Union was bad. I really can't emphasize how fucking bad the Soviet Union was. Maybe technically not as bad as the Nazis, but it wasn't for lack of trying. fuck Stalin. Anyways, so keep in mind, has just been released from the hospital from a gunshot wound that was supposed to kill him. That was, by all rights, should have killed him. He hears the Nazis are invading and he's like, all right, time to pull out the old me. And so what he does is he goes and he kisses his 2 little daughters goodbye. He packs up all of the physical wealth that he possesses and gives it to his government spy handler for safekeeping. And then he packs up a backpack full of wine, cigarettes, and cans of sardines.
Only the essentials.
And he sets out on the road to go and join his old unit so that he can fight the Nazis. He's not even going to an enlistment office. He's just going straight to the 170th HQ.
He's like, I'm going to skip the paperwork and just fucking kill Nazis.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't even, his plan was, okay, I've got my wine, I've got my cigarettes, and I've got my sardines for food because they basically keep like beef jerky. And then I've got a little bit of cash. Somewhere along the way, I'll find a gun and I'll just buy it and then use that.
Which was, that was his plan, but didn't that work? Like, because I'm pretty sure he did find a gun. I could have sworn he found a gun.
No. We're getting there. Give me just a second. So, he gets halfway to the front line, and then he runs into some soldiers who are retreating. Basically, like, for a while, like, everybody is going east so that they can go and reinforce the front line. He's just following, like, all of these soldiers, like, all of these units that are deploying to go, like, face the Nazis. Couple days of walking, suddenly they start coming back from the opposite direction. And they're all wounded and disorganized and scattered around. And so he stops a couple of them and he asks them, hey, what's going on? Why is everybody falling back? And where's the 170th? And the guys tell him, we're falling back because we're defeated and France is falling. The 170th doesn't exist anymore. It's been broken so bad that it doesn't exist as a coherent unit anymore. And so he hears this and he's like, well, shit, can't fight Nazis there. And so he turns around and he starts heading back to Paris. While he's walking to Paris, the German army passes him. The front line laps him and beats him to Paris. And so when he arrives back in Paris, it is already occupied by Nazis. And so he gets there, and there is a checkpoint manned by a German officer of the Wehrmacht who stops him at the Shut the fuck up. Holy shit.
That's how I feel anytime my Alexa goes off.
So this this Wehrmacht officer stops him at the end, like the road leading into Paris, and basically says, Paris is occupied. It's under martial law. Nobody gets in or out. And sends him away. So he's like, well, shit, what do I do now? Well, I guess I better find a way to fight these assholes. So he starts asking around and he finds out there's still some units who are active at Lyon. So if he goes to Lyon, he can meet up with one of these units and try to fight with them. So he walks the several-day walk to Lyon, and when he gets there, he runs into the remnants, the now broken but still like existing remnants of the 51st Infantry Regiment. And he goes and asks to talk to the commanding officer, and the major who's in charge there, as it turns out, was a guy that he had fought with at Verdun.
Jesus Christ.
It was one of the guys that he had gone that mission right after his face got sliced open, that mission he volunteered to lead where they passed through machine gun and artillery fire to go get intel and then come back. One of the guys on that mission was now the major who was in charge of the 51st. And so this guy knew, oh shit, it'd be really valuable to have you on our side right now. Okay, I'm not technically not allowed to do this, but I'm summarily appointing you as sergeant. You are now a sergeant in the French army. I am giving you command of a 20-man machine gun crew. Please do something with them.
My man's like, I don't have the authority, but fuck it. You're going to be a badass. Get to work.
Look, Paris is occupied. He doesn't even know if he has a government he's fighting for left. What does that mean for the chain of command? I mean, he hasn't talked to a commanding officer in like 5 days. Like, what? Like, he's on his own there. Like, he can do whatever the fuck he wants at this point. And he sees Eugene Bullard show up, and he's like, if you've got even a fraction of the old fire you had in you at Verdun, you're going to single-handedly win this war. And so yeah, they set out. So Bullard takes command of this machine gun squad. It was like 20 guys. No, more than 20 guys, yeah. I don't know. I'll get into numbers in a second. Their first assignment is to take their machine guns and fortify this village so that any German infantry units moving up into this village will be stopped and basically held up. Before they can get to the village, they are ambushed by German 88 millimeter artillery fire. During this artillery bombardment, 11 in his unit are killed and 16 are wounded. He is one of the ones that is wounded.
That is a shot, sir. Go ahead and describe the wound first, I figured.
Eugene, okay. An 88 millimeter shell, which is fucking enormous. That is a huge bit of explosives.
Big as fuck.
An 88 millimeter shell lands 10 feet away from him. The explosion pushes him flying through the air 40 feet. He crashes into the side of a building going at about 60 miles an hour.
Mock Jesus.
Yeah, at highway speeds, he crashes into a brick wall. He shatters a vertebrae.
My man was built different because there's no way anyone else lives.
No. One of his vertebrae in his neck is shattered. He breaks several ribs. The side of his body that crashes into the wall is pretty bad. The side of his body that was facing the explosion is covered with so many lacerations from shrapnel that he can't wear clothes for the next few days without them bleeding through. And then on top of all of that, he gets a pretty nasty concussion as well.
Well, no shit. Cheers.
Prost. So he's dragged off to a field hospital, and they start to do some basic first aid on him, but before they can do any operations on him, they're basically like, listen, the Nazis are going to overrun this position at any moment. We know what the Nazis do to wounded. And not only are you wounded, but you are a famous French war hero who is also black and is now being caught by the Nazis in the French military fighting against Nazis. If they find you here, they will kill you without a second thought. You need to leave, or you will die here.
This man's lucky he's alive right now. What the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah. But he's Eugene Bullard, so he stands up from the bed, packs his kit, and leaves on foot.
Action hero shit. 3 shot sips, not shots. All right.
3. Please don't say 3 shots.
I mean, at that point, 3 shots is all would be understandable. Standing up after that, fuck.
So, despite his injuries, he packs up and he flees in the direction. Basically, he heads to the West Coast and finds the first American embassy that he can find. Because now his plan is, there's no fighting Nazis now. At least not from the French military. I need to get to the U.S. so I can keep myself safe. Because as long as I'm safe, I will find a way to make sure my daughters are safe. And that is my top priority right now. And so his goal is find the American embassy and get passage to the U.S. So he goes out, he runs into a French soldier who is basically like, his unit has dissolved. Like it ceased to exist. It was beaten so badly. And so he has a bike and he's just kind of trying to pedal home at this point. He hasn't eaten in like 3 days. So Eugene comes across this soldier and they're both like, they both hang out for a little bit. They're sitting under a tree in the shade, just kind of relaxing. The French soldier agreed to trade Eugene his bike in exchange for a couple cans of sardines so that he can have something to eat. And Eugene's like, hey, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do that. And so that is how Eugene gets a bike. And he sets off and excuse me. He sets off and he eventually makes it to the coast. And he finds a city that has an American embassy. He goes into the embassy and says, hey, here's what's happened. Here's who I am. I am an American citizen and I need to get to the United States like yesterday. And so they look through his stuff and he's like, the embassy staff are like, okay, we can get you to the US. We just need physical proof that you're an American. We need a passport. We need an American passport. And he says, I don't have a passport. I've never had a passport. I came to Europe by smuggling myself on a ship when I was 13. I have lived in France for the last,
Any other situation where he explained this to any embassy trying to get back to the U.S., they would think his ass was lying.
Yeah. Yeah, so he explained to them, I've been living in France for 26 years, and the way I originally got here was smuggling on board a ship. I don't have a passport. I was 13. I ran away from home. I don't have documentation, but I can do whatever you want to prove that I'm an American citizen short of documentation. Just ask. And so he explains to them he's originally from Columbus, Georgia. As it turns out, one of the Americans on staff at this embassy is from Columbus, Georgia. And so he comes to you.
What are the fucking odds, by the way?
What are the fucking odds? If it weren't for that one coincidence, he would have been captured by Nazis and he would have been executed. So this American guy from Columbus, Georgia, just asks him a few questions about the layout of like landmarks in Columbus, Georgia, and he answers them all because he's from there, and he's like, yeah, he answered them all right. He is really from Columbus, Georgia. And so they're like, okay, that's good enough for us. And so they prepare his documentation.
this shit, like, we break it out into, like, World War III today. No nukes, like, miraculous situation, whatever. And we have an equivalent situation. There's no way in hell that even if the man pulls this off because, like, he gets that lucky, they still send his ass back to the U.S.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. In today's day and age, he never would have made it to Europe without a passport. That is a uniquely 1910 thing to happen, 1912 thing to happen. That's not something you can do today.
I mean, you got me there, but still.
Anyways, they're satisfied. He is really, of course, he's really American. Living in France for 26 years, it's affected his accent a little bit, but he still speaks with a southern twang. So they prepare his documentation so that he can get his passport. Here's the problem. They don't do passports at this embassy. There is one embassy left that still does passports. It is 175 miles south.
Oh.
They tell him, take your documentation to this city that is 175 miles away while you're wounded from being...
Wounded is... That should be death, not, oh, I'm hurt. This man should not fucking be alive.
You were on the verge of death for the 4th or 5th time in your entire life. You need to go to this town that's 175 miles away so that this documentation that we've given you can be used to make you a new passport. And so he sucks it up and he does it. He hops on that bike he got from the French soldier. He bikes for 2.5 days straight until he reaches this town. He shows up to the embassy, and as it turns out, when he shows up to the embassy, everybody's out on lunch.
What the fuck?
And so he waits an hour for them to come back from lunch.
My man's has all kinds of fucking luck and shows up while everyone's at lunch. How?
This is the most unlucky 2 weeks of his life. Well, except for when his mom died and his dad was almost lynched. But other than that, yeah, it's like he saved up all of his bad luck for 2 periods in his life. The first one was when his dad was almost lynched. The second was when he accidentally found himself caught in Nazi-occupied France as a black man who's a French war hero. And then he packed all of his bad luck into those 2 tiny little periods of his life, and the rest of it was just cashing in good luck.
This is one of the times where, like, you can't explain someone's good luck to the point where it had to have been, like, past life good luck saved up or some bullshit like that. Because the amount of bad luck this man has experienced, like, yes, it should have killed him, but the good luck outweighs it by such a far margin that it's insane.
Right, yeah. So he waits around for an hour until these guys get back from lunch. He goes in. It's about a 4-hour process to get his new passport made. He gets his picture taken. That picture must have looked like absolute dog shit. Like he was literally like, it would have looked like he was literally dying in that picture.
Dog shit. He probably was dying. I don't know how this man was alive at this point.
Yeah. So he so yeah, for big long process takes the better part of the afternoon. But he finally does get his passport. And then he walks out of the embassy to discover that his bike has been stolen.
What the fuck?
So my teenager brain popped back out, like the brain that I had as like an edgy teenager popped back out when I read this next bit. Because I thought this was the funniest shit in the fucking world just for no other reason than the stereotype. Because what he does in response to this is that he steals somebody else's bike.
What the fuck?
The one time there were 2 times in his entire life he ever lived up to the black stereotype. One of them was to exploit. One of them was when he was in the slapstick troupe, and he lived up to like he did like the fucking like minstrel show stereotypes to get some laughs out of some racist white people so he can make money. And then the other times when he stole a bike so that he could escape the Nazi occupation of France.
Honestly, every time he fit a stereotype, I can't blame his ass.
It's for a genuine reason. My
It's either exploiting racist people or, hey, I'm running away from the fucking Nazis.
Yeah, my teenager brain, like as soon as I read that, like I felt like my 14-year-old self just popped back out into my brain, just chuckled. Anyways, yeah, he steals a bike and just here's the thing. The town where he this other town that he had to come to get his passport is not a port town. It's inland. He needs to get back to the port town where he started in order to get a ship to go to the US.
So what you're saying is he had to bounce his ass around to be able to get away from the Nazis.
Right. So he rode his bike once again. So yeah, he pedals 2.5 days straight, gets back to this town where he started, where he got the documentation that he needed to do to get his passport. So it's like 5 days round trip. The Nazis have occupied. Now, here's something I didn't mention before. I really need to emphasize: from the initial Nazi invasion of France to the complete occupation to the capitulation of the French government to the Nazis was about 8 days.
Holy shit.
8 days. So at this point, he has been riding around on a bike trying to get out of this country for about a week of Nazi occupation. Of like the Nazis completely controlling the country. Like while he is riding, he is avoiding like Nazi like military units that like Wehrmacht units that are moving up to occupy towns.
He has god tier luck even when his life is in danger.
Yeah. But he does eventually make it back to the American embassy, and they manage to get him a ship. He smuggles out to Spain, and then from Spain he's able to get back to the United States, and he lands in New York City. Once he gets to New York City, it's his first time ever in New York City. It is actually his first time in the northern United States.
This man's luck is literally god tier, and I'm just baffled the entire story.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. So he gets to New York City. This is a place where he has never been, and he knows nobody. It's the first time in over 2 decades that he finds himself in a place where he doesn't know anybody and nobody knows who he is. He's just a face in the crowd, and he has no money he doesn't have money. He doesn't have connections. He finds himself in New York City, and now he has to try to find a way to live. So he starts working odd jobs, just, to feed himself and keep a roof over his head. And in his free time, he spends all of his free time basically like searching around, trying to figure out who he can talk to that can get a hold of his daughters, who can figure out what's going on with his daughters, because they are still in Paris. And
what baffles me is he was never worried about his daughters, who were mixed raced.
Oh no, he was worried the entire time. No, he was fucking he was like the most anxious human being who has ever lived the entire time that I've been talking about the Nazi occupation of France. It's all that he could think about. The reason that he fled to the United States is because he knew that was his best chance of not dying, because he knew that if he died, there'd be nobody to protect his daughters under Nazi occupation. So eventually, while he's in the U.S., he somehow manages to get a hold of an old friend of his from when he ran the bar in Paris. This guy had been an American ambassador to France, and since then had become a high-ranking member of the State Department in the U.S. federal government. He found out this guy was working for the State Department, and he shot him a letter and was like, "Hey, my daughters are in Paris. Can you help me get them out?" And the guy, literally, he makes one phone call to Berlin, because he has a connection in Berlin. One phone call, and the next day he calls Eugene back and he says, "Hey," sorry, my dog's being weird. The next day he calls Eugene back and he's like, "Hey, I got some word back from my contacts in Berlin. We have found your daughters in Paris. They are in American custody and they are being sent to New York City right now."
Action hero shit, 3 sips.
Woo!
I want to explain my reasoning. Like, obviously it's not arguable, but like, that feels like the kind of action hero shit where like, hey, I wasn't able to save these couple people right there at the end, but I got to be my heroic moment, got out of the situation, and got help. That's what it was, right there at the end.
And that's why I think that America has the best citizenship laws in the world. And let me explain. These 2 girls, who are half French, were both raised in Paris, France, and had never set foot on American soil, were both American. They were both American citizens because Eugene was an American citizen. If the United States had more restrictive citizenship laws, these 2 girls would have died. But because they were American citizens, we had the ability, our State Department, the American State Department, had the ability to influence the Nazi government to get them out. That's why America has the best citizenship laws and why Donald Trump is fucking evil for trying to change them.
I mean, Donald Trump's just like a caricature of evil. Like, everything I've heard this man want to do to like make the perfect quote unquote America for him is just like let's try and kill as many people who aren't 1%ers as we can indirectly as possible.
Yeah. I guess while we're on the tangent, American laws on citizenship being as permissive as they are is a perfect encapsulation of all of the best parts of American society and American civilization. The few good things that we can draw from as Americans about what's great about being American, I think are exemplified in our citizenship laws. And I think anybody who has any intent to change American citizenship laws beyond trying to make them more inclusive is fucking evil. They are evil people, and they should be shunned and purged from American society. The fact that all that's required for you to be a citizen is to either be born in American territory or to have a parent that's American, and that makes you American, that's fucking amazing. That's incredible. The fact that that gives you the rights of America, the rights and privileges of American citizenship is insane. That's insane. That is unprecedented in all the annals of human history. It is a perfect encapsulation of genuine, ideological devotion to the idea of freedom and liberty. It's fucking great. American citizenship is awesome, and more people should have it. I'm sorry, this is something ever since Republicans started talking about repealing birthright citizenship, I started thinking real hard about American citizenship, laws. And
Repealing birthright American citizenship is so fucking stupid that I literally lost brain cells hearing the arguments on why it was a good idea, which was not convincing, even if I had lost 50 IQ points or more.
So Eugene's daughters make it to New York, and really, all they really have left to do is settle down. It's 1940.
I mean, this man's already lived a full and rich life. By all rights, his ass should have been dead long ago. And I'm not meaning that in a pessimistic way. I'm just talking about law of averages way.
Yeah, statistically, this man has lived a full life.
Statistically speaking, this man should not be alive to do a tenth of what the fuck he does.
Yeah, statistically speaking, this man has lived 10 full lives. So, keep in mind, at this point, he's 45. So he's not the spry young man he used to be, but he's not exactly old either. He's not walking around with a walker right now. He went off to try to fight off the Nazi invasion of his adopted country at the age of 44. It's so his daughters make it to New York. Keep in mind, his daughters are French. They've never been to the U.S. They speak English. They have very thick French accents. I don't know. I thought that was kind of endearing, just the idea of two.
How old were they at the time?
They were teenagers. I think they would have been I think 14 and 16.
Oh wow, so mid-teens. Damn.
So they get an apartment in Harlem, a 750 square foot apartment, which sounds small, but it's bigger than the one I'm living in. So I don't know.
What was the square footage?
750.
Bigger than my apartment. I've got a 500 square foot studio.
Yeah. Then again, it's for 3 people, so.
Yeah, that's a lot smaller when there's 3 people.
Yeah. So he gets back to work. He gets work as a longshoreman again. Then December 7th, 1941. A date which will live in infamy. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, and the U.S. is now suddenly in the war.
Awakes the sleeping giant, proverbially.
Yep, as Yamamoto said, we have awoken a sleeping tiger. You know what Eugene does?
What does he do?
Well, think about it. What has he done every time a war shows up at his doorstep?
Fucking goes out and fights.
He sure tries. But for the first time in his life, he's stymied. He's not able to fight this time. Because he goes out, he goes to the enlistment offices for every single branch of the U.S. military. The Army, the Navy, the Army Air Corps, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. He goes to enlistment offices for all of them. And all of them take one look at this 46-year-old man and are like, we will have to politely decline.
Did they even look at his fucking track record?
Oh yeah, they knew. And they saw that he had been wounded like 3 times in combat. And he was, I cannot emphasize this enough, 46 years old, trying to enlist in the U.S. military.
But this man had a track record of like impressive feats to the point like this man should be like 3 different men to have the feats he has.
Yes. But also, I really cannot emphasize this enough. 46 years old, and he walks with a limp.
Since when did that stop this man, though?
It didn't stop this man, but if you're a military recruiter, granted, if this was 1944, it might have been a little bit different, but this is 1941 we're talking about. You're a recruiter looking at this guy, 46 years old, looks about 15 years older because, of all of the war that he's been through.
If you look at the actual service record from everything we've heard, I wouldn't have thought that would have stopped him for shit.
No, because they looked at his service record and they're like, oh, this guy has already given all that he's got. Like if we send this guy out, he's going to, the first time that he stubs his toe, he's going to die. He is so fragile.
That's not what I would have fucking saw. But fuck it, I guess.
From a recruiter standpoint, anything beyond 35 and you might as well be 80 years old as far as the Army is concerned.
Well, they're fucking stupid.
I don't think that Eugene would have made it very far in 1940s military.
I'm not even saying he had to have an active role. I think he could have still participated in not even just have a supervisor, but an advisory role. This man did so much shit and pulled out so much muster that he still would have been a help to the war effort, in my opinion.
Although it's something that I thought about, if you imagine because his whole motivation for his entire adult life has been everything he does for France. His intent to enlist in the U.S. military after Pearl Harbor would have been fully, his intention would be to fight to liberate France from Nazi occupation. Now, saying that,
could you imagine that? Okay, he actually gets in. He just fucking goes AWOL as soon as France is free.
What I was thinking of is if the Marine Corps had taken him, he would have ended up in the Pacific. He would have ended up fighting the Japanese, and he wouldn't have had anything to do with fighting the Nazis.
We both had goofy thoughts, but on completely different thought processes.
So, he's not able to enlist. Years pass. The war ends. His daughters grow up. They get married. They move out. He gets his service recognized by the French government. So he starts collecting a comfortable pension. He tries to get his ownership over his old bar recognized. But the problem is the bar was destroyed by artillery during the war. And so all of his records were in there. And so he doesn't have any records that he ever owned that property. And so when the French government was being like recreated from the ground up, he just didn't have proof that he owned that property. And so he wasn't able to reclaim it.
I think that was probably a big factor on why he stayed in America afterwards.
Yeah, that was most of it. Also, his daughters were in America now. And they were American now. So I think he wanted to just stay with his daughters most of all. So he's collecting a comfortable pension. He was just, at this point now, he was just an aging old veteran whiling away his days in his tiny Harlem apartment. He worked he worked a little bit as a perfume salesman, a security guard. This is an interesting one. Briefly, he worked as a fill-in drummer for Louis Armstrong.
I didn't know that one. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, there is one record that Louis Armstrong released has Eugene Bullard as the credited drummer.
I might not have been a good percussionist, but that makes me proud to be a percussionist.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so he is a published recorded jazz musician. So add that to the list of things he is.
It's fucking mile long at this point.
Right. So eventually he settled down to his final work as just an elevator operator in Rockefeller Center. And Rockefeller Center, of course, being where they recorded a lot of live TV.
Here comes one of my favorite parts of the story.
In 1959, he's asked by the French government to return to France so that he can be awarded the Médaillon Militaire and the Legion of Honor. These two awards are the two highest decorations that are given by the French government, even higher than the Croix de Guerre, which he already has. In 1959, he has the three highest honors that the French government is able to give to a person.
I don't think there'll ever be a culmination ever again to result in someone like Eugene Bullard, especially in the French military service, since then, because the circumstances that made that man were so fucking unique, and that the willpower he had was fucking Jesus Christ.
Also, I can't believe I forgot to put this in my script, but I remembered it. In 1949, I can't remember, there's a town in upstate New York where Paul Robeson. Do you know who Paul Robeson is?
Sounds familiar, but can't place it.
He was an he was a singer. Sometimes he did jazz, but mostly he did kind of folky stuff. He's a black musician. Look him up sometime. He has an incredible, just like that real classic, if you ever think about a real classic, soul bass singer voice, you think of Paul Robeson's voice. Just real classic voice. I love his music. He has an incredible voice. Yeah. Jeets! Hello, Jeets! Hi, Jeets! Anyways, in 1949, Paul Robeson, I don't even know if I know you're pretty familiar with his story, and like a lot of what I've said is kind of brought the story back to you, but I don't know if you've heard of this one. In 1949, Paul Robeson put on a benefit concert to raise money for the Civil Rights Congress as part of like the Civil Rights Movement. Paul Robeson was a former member. I can't remember if he'd ever left the party, but he was a member of the American Communist Party. And he was very active in the real early civil rights movement. He put on a benefit concert in the middle of the Red Scare in 1949 for the Civil Rights Congress. And a crowd of like white anti-communists led by like the local section of the American Legion came out and basically rioted and like violently attacked people that were attending this benefit concert for the Civil Rights Congress. And one of the pictures, the main picture that came out in the media that of these riots, of these racist anti-communist riots against the Civil Rights Congress, like benefits concert. The picture that came out that was kind of a classic was of one of the attendees that was being simultaneously, like in the same picture, simultaneously being beaten by the cops, the American Legion members, and by just some local like people, like white people that came out to local white anti-communist people. And there was just like 7 of them that were beating up on this one black man who had come to attend the concert.
If that doesn't explain America's racism, nothing else will.
Yeah. The one black man in that picture was Eugene Bullard.
How does this man have so many important parts of history yet no one fucking knows him?
That picture became like one of the rallying images of the late like going into the early 50s, like the civil rights movement, of like the representation of the intersection between police, anti-communism, and white racism against black people. That picture kind of represented all three. And it's and just by sheer coincidence, that picture happened to be taken of this guy who was also coincidentally one of the greatest war heroes in the history of this nation of France.
I love how the most French man to ever lived was American.
Was a black American who had never had any connection to France before moving there a few months before the First World War broke out.
I still claim that is the most French man to ever exist.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, the most French man who ever... Well, France has a long history of being valorizing people who were not French as like their great national heroes. I mean, Napoleon wasn't even French. Anyways, I didn't see that mentioned anywhere besides the book, besides that book. So I thought that I'd throw that in there because I think that that's a genuinely fascinating part of his story. Anyways, in 1959, so Eugene is awarded the Médaille Militaire and the Legion of Honor, which the Legion of Honor is France's Republican knighthood. Like, they have an order of knights called the Legion of Honor.
So he is Sir Ballard, essentially.
He is Sir Robert Jacques Ballard. Also, by the way, while he was living in France, people stopped calling him people stopped calling him Eugene James Bullard, and they started calling him Jacques Bullard. And so even though legally his name was Eugene James was his middle name, he went by Eugene Jacques. Anyways, yes, he was a knight. He is Sir Eugene Jacques Bullard. Once he got back to the States, he started wearing those two medals on his uniform that he wore to work, his elevator operator uniform. Because, he was so fucking proud of them. Which, why not? After returning to the U.S., he was working his elevator one day when Dave Garroway, one of the most storied journalists.
This story that I fucking love.
Yeah, one of the most storied journalists in the history of American news. The host of the Today Show on NBC. He gets on the elevator. This elevator, he knows Eugene by name. He calls him Gene. And they know each other. They talk every day when he's on the elevator. They know each other. He looks at Eugene, and he finally actually takes a close look at the medals he's wearing on his uniform. He takes a look at him, and he's like, "Hey, Eugene, those don't look American." And Eugene is like, "Yeah, no, they're French." Why do you have French medals? He's like, "I was in the French army." Why were you in the French army? Because the American army wouldn't take me? Because I'm black? And he looked closer. He's like, that looks really familiar. What is that? What citation is that? And he said, that's the Legion of Honor. And Garroway is like the Legion of like knighthood of the French Republic. And he's like, yeah, I just got it rewarded a couple months ago. A couple months ago? And he's like, why? What did you do to get that? He's like, oh, well, first I killed a shit ton of Germans at the Somme. And then I killed a shit ton more Germans at Champagne. And then I kept doing badass action hero shit after getting half my face blown off at Verdun.
By the way, once you finish this part, this counts as action hero shit because this is like the epilogue part or like the intro part where someone starts telling their story or is ending their story.
Yeah, and so Eugene is just explaining like his life story to this guy while they're on the elevator. And Garroway is just like, okay, would you like to do an interview on live TV about your life? And Eugene is like, I don't know. I got work to do. Like if I did that, I'd have to call somebody and get my shift covered. And Garroway is just like, hey, don't even fucking worry about it. I'll make some calls. You're all set. If you're able to do this, we'd love to have you on the show today. And Eugene is just like, Okay, yeah. If you got it covered, then yeah, let's go for it. And so that day, the same day, in his elevator operator uniform with his medals on them, he does an interview with Dave Garroway live on the Today Show and becomes instantly nationally famous. Before this, he was unknown in the United States. He was a war hero back in France. Everybody knew who Eugene Bullard was.
This is the part where it comes in like, hey, this story's no way it's fucking true because Americans don't believe shit.
Yeah. But this was when the United States found out about this guy who is so beloved in France. Like, in France, he's a hero. In the United States, he's just an elevator operator.
And that's capitalism in a nutshell.
Yeah. And so, due to this interview, overnight he becomes nationally famous as the Black French-American war hero. So, because of his sudden fame, he decided to team up with an author and write his memoirs. But no publisher would take the finished manuscript because they thought the stories were made up.
I hate to be on this side of like downplaying someone in history, especially a person of color. But if I didn't know this was corroborated with like historical proof, I would have a hard time fucking believing this wasn't a made up story.
Right. Yeah, this sounds like a mix between wartime propaganda and it's like the Iliad, like old Greek mythology.
This is like if someone decided to see like, okay, here's a cool story from like the like they took a couple different like I mentioned it a little bit throughout here, but like if you took like several different people's like really insane moment stories, like yes, it would be a cool story, but it wouldn't be enough to make like a huge narrative around. Just like a one-off instance that wouldn't make someone famous, but like stitched it under the idea that they were the same person and made an insane story that way. But it actually fucking happened and it wasn't made up, but it was actually just one fucking person.
God, Eugene Bullard is so fucking cool.
This man is a legend. I would drink a beer with this man.
Oh yeah, and he, you know what? He'd probably love to drink a beer with you too because he just caught along with people. He's one of those people that like genuinely just love to be around other people.
He's that kind of person that would like, no matter the company, he could get along with them as long as they weren't fucking evil. And if they were evil, he could pretend so he could sell their ass out later.
Eugene's last public appearance was in 1961. Charles de Gaulle was the commander of French forces during World War II. So even after the French occupation, he became like the de facto leader of the French government, as well as the French military that was still active in North Africa and were actively fighting against the Nazi occupation of France, as well as the collaborator government that was formed by the Nazis, the Vichy government. And so as a result of his role in basically leading the French people through the resistance against the Nazi occupation, he became one of the most beloved heroes in French history, Charles de Gaulle. At this time, he was president of France, 1961. He gave a public speech, or he made a visit to the United States, and so Charles de Gaulle, then president of France, is making a visit to the United States, and he's in New York City. He gives a public speech at an auditorium with 5,000 people in attendance. When he comes onto stage, he sees Eugene Bullard in the front row in his full French infantry uniform with all of his medals. De Gaulle, upon seeing him, immediately jumps off stage and approaches him and asks, "Are you Eugene Bullard?" Eugene says, "Yeah, I am." And he stands up and holds out his hand to shake it. And Charles de Gaulle, one of the greatest heroes of the French people in all of their long history, refuses his handshake and pulls him in for a big hug.
I wouldn't call that refusing a handshake. I would say they superseded a handshake or something like that. Because like that, damn.
And as he pulls him in for a hug, he says in his ear, "France owes you a greater debt than we could ever pay back."
And he's goddamn right.
Eugene Jacques Bullard, the Black Swallow of Death, the first black combat pilot in history, a war hero, a spy, a successful businessman, and a humble elevator operator, and a knight of France, died in his bed in Harlem from stomach cancer on October 12th, 1961, 3 days after his 66th birthday.
With how many twists and turns I heard throughout this story the first time I heard it, I genuinely did not think this man would live that long. Just because like the amount of action hero type shit he did. And like it sucks that he died to like stomach cancer, but also it's impressive that he lived long enough to get out of the situations he was in to die to stomach cancer.
All of the shit he went through, and it was cancer that got him, is fucking crazy. He was buried in the French war veteran section of Flushing Cemetery in Queens, in New York City. And he was buried per his own request. He was buried in his French Legionnaire's uniform.
He was proud of his service. I don't blame him.
Yeah. But that's the thing. He wasn't buried in his pilot uniform. He wasn't buried in the suit that he wore, any of the suits that he wore when he was the bar owner and he was a spy. It was the uniform of a humble infantryman.
This man was a fucking badass, and that's the...
God, he was so fucking cool, dude. He was so fucking cool.
If I didn't think we would get a copyright strike right now is when I would edit in that clip from Dragon Ball Z Abridged from Team 4-Star where Vegeta is shouting, "He's so fucking cool!"
Damn, what are your thoughts?
This is where it pisses me off that we focus like on American history so much to the point where Eugene Bullard is American history in a way that isn't American history, and it pisses me off because like this is the kind of shit that would get people who don't give a flying fuck about American history to pay attention if we sprinkled in people like this. In like one small lesson, like, yeah, it wouldn't do a lot of justice on his story the way we would teach it in like high school or like, I don't think you could do it at middle school, but you could maybe a little bit if you pushed it, some of the summarization to middle school. That would actually get people more interested in history and American history. And it's just sad that stories like this, like there's plenty of stories in a similar vein where like, hey, this person did some insane shit in this thing that's indirectly related to American history. So we're going to tell you this person's story as a narrative to tell this like World War I or World War II, because a lot of people would probably pay more attention to like the big overarching history things and forget less if they had this extra narrative in like American education system of having this really fucking cool It sounds like he's made up, but he actually fucking lived person. Alrighty, Derek, where can they find you on social media? Because, like, we've said our piece, our judgment. This recording's 4.5 fucking hours long.
Yeah, that's a good one though. You can find me on Blue Sky at Visigoth. The O is a 0.
So they can
Sam
find me
doing
at
the
Tim
good
aka
stuff.
Otis on Blue Sky, and they can find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at the Alexander Society Pod, on Blue Sky at Alex Society Pod, and on TikTok at Alexander Society. If they liked what they've listened to, give us a rate and review on their streaming platform of choice, and we will see you next time.
Merry Christmas.